I thought she was going to fire me. Instead, she asked me to marry her. The email had arrived at 11:47 p.m. on a Wednesday. Ms. Harrington requests your presence. Tomorrow, 6 a.m. Alone. I stared at those 3 words on my phone screen, my stomach dropping. Nobody got summoned to the penthouse suite on the 42nd floor unless they were getting fired. But I'm getting ahead of myself. 3 days earlier, I was the one who crashed into Victoria Harrington in the darkened hallway of the 15th floor. It was 9:30 p.m. and I was rushing to leave after my 8th late night that week. Sophie's daycare closed at 10, and I was already cutting it close. I turned the corner too fast and slammed straight into someone coming the other way. Files exploded across the polished floor. Papers scattered like leaves in a storm. God, I'm so sorry. I dropped to my knees, gathering documents with shaking hands. Watch where you're going. Her voice was ice. I looked up, and my heart stopped. Victoria Harrington, 29 years old, CEO of Harrington Media Group, and a woman who never ever descended to the lower floors. She crouched across from me, her movements precise and controlled, each paper collected with surgical efficiency. I handed her the leather portfolio, our fingers nearly touching. She took it without a word, her expression unreadable. Then she turned and walked toward the elevator. That should have been the end of it. But I noticed something she'd missed. A cream-colored envelope, embossed and official-looking, half-hidden beneath a filing cabinet near the wall. I grabbed it and jogged after her. Wait, you dropped this. She stopped, turned, looked at the envelope in my hand like it might detonate. She reached into her purse and pulled out 5 crisp $100 bills. For your trouble. I stared at the money, then at her. I was just returning what's yours. I don't need to be paid for that. Her eyes narrowed, studying me like I was a puzzle she hadn't expected to encounter. Most people would take it. I'm not most people. I walked away, leaving her standing in that hallway with the money still in her hand. I didn't think about it again. What I didn't know was that Victoria Harrington never forgot moments like that. So when that email arrived 3 days later, I put on my only suit that still fit, bought gas station coffee with my last $5, and took the elevator to the 42nd floor at 5:55 a.m. My hands were shaking. The doors opened to reveal floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay. Victoria stood with her back to me, silhouetted against the rising sun over the Olympic Mountains. She didn't turn around. I need a husband, contract basis, 1 year. I stood there frozen, certain I'd misheard. She turned to face me, her expression clinical. I've looked into you, Mr. Cole. Medical debt from your wife's cancer treatment. $145,000. 3 months behind on rent. Sophie's daycare fees piling up. My throat went dry. How do you know my daughter's name? I know everything I need to know. She moved closer, her heels clicking on the marble floor. You need money. I need a husband. This is business. What kind of business arrangement are we talking about? Move into my penthouse, attend family functions, convince my brother this marriage is real. She paused, watching my reaction. I'll erase your debt, double your salary, provide health insurance for Sophie. The question escaped before I could stop it. And the sleeping arrangements. She held my gaze, and for just a second I saw something flicker behind those cold eyes. Something that looked almost like vulnerability. Before we dive into what happens next, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your city or country in the comments. Only when necessary. Victoria's answer was clinical, delivered like a business term. Only when someone needs convincing. I asked for 48 hours to think about it. She handed me a folder, 47 pages thick, and told me her lawyer would be in touch on Monday. Then she walked me to the elevator and I rode down to the parking garage with my hands shaking so badly I could barely grip the steering wheel. My apartment was a 400-square-foot studio in Capitol Hill. Sophie slept on the sofa bed. I slept on an air mattress that had a slow leak, so by morning I was basically on the floor. That night I tucked her in and watched her breathe, her small chest rising and falling with the steady rhythm that had kept me sane for the past 3 years. I opened my laptop. Bank account, $847. Bills due in the next 2 weeks, $2,340. I did the math I'd been doing every night for months. It never came out any different. At 2:34 a.m., I picked up my phone and typed, I'm in, but Sophie stays out of this. Completely. Victoria's reply came 3 minutes later. Agreed. My lawyer will contact you Monday. I set the phone down and stared at the cracked ceiling. I just sold myself. I wasn't sure if that made me smart or desperate. Probably both. Monday morning, James Chen's office occupied the 28th floor of a downtown high-rise with views of Puget Sound. Victoria was already there when I arrived, sitting perfectly straight in a leather chair that probably cost more than my monthly rent. James laid out the contract page by page. Duration, 12 months from signing date. Compensation, $145,000 in debt elimination, plus a salary increase to $120,000 annually, plus full health benefits for me and Sophie. Living arrangement, Harrington penthouse, separate bedrooms. Public appearances, minimum twice weekly. Physical intimacy, as required for believability. I stopped him there. What does as required mean exactly? James looked uncomfortable. Victoria didn't flinch. It means hand-holding at dinners, a kiss on the cheek at charity events, whatever married couples do in public. She met my eyes. Nothing more unless absolutely necessary for the appearance. And who decides what's necessary? We both do. I almost asked another question. What happens if one of us develops actual feelings, but the words stuck in my throat? James was watching. Victoria's expression was carved from ice. So I swallowed the question and signed my name at the bottom of page 47. Victoria signed below mine. We shook hands. It felt like sealing a business deal, which I supposed it was. I'll have movers pick up your things Friday, she said. You move in Saturday. What do I tell Sophie? For the first time, Victoria hesitated. Just a fraction of a second, but I caught it. Tell her you got a promotion, and we're staying with a friend for a while. Saturday morning, I stood in the penthouse with 2 suitcases, 1 backpack, and Sophie's collection of plastic dinosaurs. The space was 3,500 square feet of glass and steel with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked Puget Sound. I could see the Olympic Mountains. I could see ferry boats cutting white lines across the water. I could see a life I'd never imagined living. Victoria gave me the tour like a realtor showing a property. Master Suite East Wing, Guest Suite West Wing, neutral zones, kitchen, living room, office. The rule knock before entering private spaces. Sophie, holding her T-Rex, looked around with wide eyes. Why does your friend live in a cloud? It's not a cloud, sweetie. It's just really high up. Is she a princess? I almost laughed. Victoria, standing in the hallway within earshot, allowed herself the smallest smile. The first genuine expression I'd seen from her. That first night I couldn't sleep. The penthouse was too cold, both in temperature and atmosphere. At 11, I gave up and went to the kitchen for water. Victoria was there, still in her work clothes, laptop open on the island counter. You always work this late. She didn't look up. Success doesn't sleep. Neither does anxiety. That made her glance up. I saw surprise in her eyes, quickly masked. I'm anxious, I continued. You're working, same thing? Victoria closed the laptop. We stood in silence for 5 long minutes. Then she said, Marcus called, dinner Sunday, the whole family. I'll be ready. No, you won't, but you'll survive. The next few days were a crash course in becoming someone I wasn't. Wednesday. Victoria took me shopping at Nordstrom. 3 suits, 8 shirts, shoes, a watch. The saleswoman kept commenting on how adorable we were together. Victoria played the part perfectly, touching my arm, laughing at something I said. I felt like an imposter in an expensive costume. Thursday, she briefed me on the Harrington family. Marcus, VP of Operations 35, divorced, ambitious. Helen Cross, board chair, her father's oldest friend, neutral but watchful. 5 other board members, each with detailed profiles in the folder she handed me. Our story, she said, is that we met at the office charity gala 8 months ago. Kept it quiet. Married quickly because when you know, you know. Her tone was flat, rehearsed. Do you always research people like this? Only people I need. Friday, we went ring shopping at Tiffany's. I'd never been inside a Tiffany's. Victoria selected simple platinum bands without hesitation. The cashier asked when the wedding was. We already did it, Victoria said smoothly. City Hall, kept it simple. She slid the ring onto my finger. It fit perfectly. I estimated your size. That night I practiced our story in the mirror until the words felt almost real. Around 10, there was a knock on my door. Victoria stood in the hallway, and for the first time since I'd met her, she looked uncertain. You don't have to memorize everything, just be yourself. Mostly. Which parts should I change? The part that looks terrified. She sat on the edge of my bed. A boundary crossed, subtle but significant. Marcus will try to intimidate you. He does it to everyone. Why does he hate you so much? Because our father chose me. Sunday arrived too fast. We drove across Lake Washington to Medina, where the Harrington estate sprawled across 2 acres of manicured perfection. 12,000 square feet of old money and older grudges. Marcus was waiting in the foyer. Tailored suit, bourbon in hand, smile that never reached his eyes. Victoria, and this must be the husband I didn't know existed. His handshake was designed to hurt. I didn't flinch. Funny, I don't remember getting a wedding invitation. We kept it small, Victoria said. You understand. Marcus turned his attention to me. What did you say you do at Harrington Media? Copywriter, creative department. And how long have you been writing? The subtext was clear as glass. How long have you been sleeping your way up? Dinner was formal. 8 people at a table meant for 12. Marcus, Helen, Cross. 3 board members and their spouses, Victoria and me. Crystal glasses caught the chandelier light. China clinked softly. I'd catered events like this. Never imagined sitting at the table. Helen Cross, 70 and sharp as a blade, smiled at me with genuine warmth. Ethan, tell us how you two met. I delivered the story we'd practiced. Company fundraiser last spring. I was covering it for the internal newsletter. Victoria was giving a speech. She was magnetic. I dropped my notes. She helped me pick them up. I asked if I could interview her. She said yes. And somewhere between her talking about Q3 projections and market expansion, I said, looking at Victoria. I forgot every question I'd prepared. Victoria, not missing a beat, added, You asked if I believed in love at first sight. I covered my surprise. You said no, but second sight maybe. Helen smiled. The tension in the room softened by a degree. Then Marcus struck. Ethan, I'm curious. What does your family think of all this? He knew my wife was dead. This was a trap. My daughter loves Victoria. You have a daughter. Marcus raised an eyebrow. How old? 7. And Vic's met her, that's fast. Victoria's voice could have frozen water. Some things don't need a timeline, Marcus. Of course. I'm just thinking about Father's will, the clause about... Helen cut him off. Marcus, not at dinner. After the meal, Victoria stepped onto the balcony. I followed. She stood looking at the Seattle skyline across the dark water. I think I just made things worse. You did fine. Better than fine. He knows something's off. She turned to face me, and for the first time I saw how tired she was. Not just physically. The kind of tired that comes from fighting too long without knowing why you're still standing. Marcus always knows something's off. It's a superpower. She paused. This is going to get harder before it gets easier. I know. The balcony door opened. Marcus stepped out. Victoria immediately took my hand. The first real touch between us, skin on skin, and I felt her trembling. Marcus watched us for a long moment, then went back inside. In the car going home, neither of us spoke for 10 minutes. Finally, I said, Your hand was shaking. When you took mine, was it, you don't have to pretend with me when it's just us? Long pause. I don't know how to not pretend anymore. Back at the penthouse, Victoria poured 2 glasses of whiskey, handed me one. To surviving round 1. How many rounds are there with Marcus Infinite? We sat in the living room, the city lights spread below us like scattered diamonds. She was quiet for a long time. Then, my father's will, the marriage clause. Do you want to know why? Only if you want to tell me. He thought I was too cold, too career-focused. He wanted me to understand partnership before I could run his company. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. Manipulative, right? Yeah, it is. She looked at me with something I couldn't quite read in her eyes. Surprise, maybe. Or relief that someone had simply agreed instead of making excuses. Most people would have taken the money and resented me for it, she said. Maybe I still will, but not tonight. We talked until past midnight. She told me about growing up invisible in her own home. Marcus was groomed from the age of 12 to take over the company. She was an afterthought. Then their father died and left it all to her anyway, with one impossible condition attached. I told her about Sarah, about the last 6 months when the hospital became our second home, about the bills that arrived faster than I could open them, about the moment I realized I was going to lose everything. When I finally went to bed, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The contract said 12 months. It felt like a lifetime. It felt like nothing at all. The next Saturday, I mentioned over breakfast that I was taking Sophie to the park. Victoria surprised me by asking if she could come. "I want to see what your life looks like outside the penthouse." I hesitated, then said yes. She arrived at Volunteer Park wearing jeans and a sweater, her hair pulled back, no makeup. She looked younger, more human. Sophie noticed her first. "Who's that lady, a friend?" Victoria walked over. Sophie looked up at her with the fearless curiosity of 7-year-olds. "Are you Daddy's girlfriend?" I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. Victoria crouched down to Sophie's level. "I am. Does that mean you're going to be my new mom?" I saw panic flash in Victoria's eyes. "That's not how it works, sweetie," I said quickly. "Okay." Sophie shrugged and ran back to the swings. We walked along the edge of the pond while Sophie ran ahead, chasing imaginary dinosaurs. "Tell me about her," Victoria said. "She's 6, smart, obsessed with paleontology." Victoria smiled, actually smiled. "She sounds amazing." "She is. What does she know about this arrangement?" "Nothing, and it's staying that way." "That's probably smart." Victoria watched Sophie spinning in circles, laughing at nothing. "She's lucky to have you." "I'm the lucky one." We stood there in comfortable silence. Then Victoria said she should go. I said okay. She walked away without looking back. That night, lying in bed, I thought about the way Victoria had looked at Sophie, not with polite detachment, with something quieter, something that looked almost like longing. 2 weeks later, Victoria told me we needed wedding photos. For the family. For proof. The photographer met us at a studio in Sodo. White backdrop, professional lights, instructions to stand closer, look at each other, smile like we meant it. "Hold hands," he said. We did. "Victoria, rest your head on his shoulder." She did. "Ethan, put your arm around her waist." I hesitated. Victoria whispered, "It's fine." I put my arm around her and she leaned into me, and for just a moment it didn't feel like acting. The photographer asked us to look at each other. We did. I looked into her eyes and saw something I hadn't expected. Vulnerability. Fear. The same things I felt every time I thought about the next 10 months. The shutter clicked. Victoria stepped back immediately. The moment shattered like glass. On the drive home, neither of us spoke. When we got back, she went straight to her office and closed the door. I sat on the couch and stared at the ceiling, realizing that the lines we'd drawn were not as clear as either of us had thought. A month into the contract, Marcus sent an email to the entire board. Corporate speak for a coup. He questioned Victoria's recent decisions, raised concerns about her leadership. It was his opening move. Victoria read it 3 times, her hands shaking with fury. Then she called me into her office. "He's making his move. He's going to try to prove our marriage is fake. He's going to dig into your past, find the contract, expose everything. So, what do? We become more convincing. We act like a real couple, not just at dinners and photo shoots, all the time." The next day, Marcus called me. Said he wanted to meet. Just the 2 of us. Every instinct told me it was a trap, but I agreed. Victoria stopped me before I left. "He'll try to buy you off or threaten you, record everything." We met at a coffee shop near the office. Marcus was already there, corner booth, casual smile. "I appreciate you coming." "What do you want, Marcus?" "To be direct. I know Victoria hired you. I know about the debt. I know about the contract." My blood went cold. "I don't blame you for taking the deal," he continued. "But I also know this isn't going to end well. When Luna falls, you're going to fall with her." He leaned forward. "I'm offering you a way out. Walk away now, and I'll make sure the contract stays buried. Nobody will know. You can go back to your life, keep the money she's already given you, and move on. All I have to do is disappear. It's the smart play, the safe play." He sat back. "Think about it." Then he stood and walked out. I sat there for a long time after he left. I thought about the offer. I thought about Sophie. I thought about the life I could have if I just took the easy way out. And then I thought about Victoria sitting in that office until midnight fighting a battle she didn't know how to win. I thought about the way she'd looked at me in the dark when the power went out. The way she'd smiled at Sophie in the park. I picked up my phone and called her, told her about the meeting, told her what Marcus had offered. And her voice was carefully neutral. "I'm not going anywhere." Silence on the other end. Then, quietly, "Why?" "Because Marcus is wrong. This isn't going to end with us falling. It's going to end with us still standing." "Thank you." Her voice was softer than I'd ever heard it. "You don't need to thank me. I made my choice." But that night, lying in the guest room, I wondered if I'd just made the biggest mistake of my life, because Marcus wasn't the kind of man who took no for an answer, and I'd just put a target on my back. Marcus moved faster than I'd expected. Within a week of our coffee shop conversation, the pressure began in small ways. Pointed questions from colleagues, knowing looks in the elevator. Someone had started talking. But life in the penthouse was shifting in ways I hadn't anticipated. 3 weeks in, I woke at 6:15 to make coffee. Victoria appeared in the kitchen doorway, and for the first time since I'd moved in, she wasn't already dressed for battle. No makeup, hair loose around her shoulders. She looked almost vulnerable. "You always wake up this early?" she asked. "Sophie's school starts at 8, habit." "I envy that, routine." I poured her a cup, added 3 sugars and a splash of oat milk without asking. She noticed. "How did you know I pay attention?" She smiled, actually smiled, not the corporate smile she wore in meetings, something real. That Wednesday, a storm knocked out power across 3 neighborhoods. The penthouse went dark just after 10. Victoria emerged from her office with her phone as a flashlight. I found candles and 2 wine glasses. We sat on opposite ends of the couch at first. Then gradually, the distance closed. "Why did you really agree to this?" she asked in the darkness. "You already know why." "I know what the contract says. I want to know what you were thinking when you signed it." I took a long drink. "I was thinking about Sophie. About what kind of father lets his kid grow up poor when he has a chance to fix it." "Do you regret it?" "I don't know yet. Do you?" "No, I'd do whatever it takes to keep Marcus from winning." She paused. "Most people would have taken the money and resented me for it. Maybe I still will, but not tonight." In the faint glow of our phones, something shifted in her expression. We talked until the power came back on 2 hours later. She told me about growing up invisible in the Harrington house, about being erased until it was convenient for her not to be. I told her about Sarah's last 6 months, about the hospital becoming our second home, about the day Sophie asked if I was leaving too. When the lights flickered back to life, we both blinked against the sudden brightness. Victoria stood, said she should get back to work, but she stopped at the doorway. "Thank you," she said. "I didn't ask what for." The next Saturday, I mentioned taking Sophie to Pike Place Market. Victoria surprised me again. "Can I come? I want to see what your life looks like outside of this." She gestured at the penthouse. We met at the market at noon. Sophie dragged Victoria to the flower stands, pointing at every color, asking the names of varieties Victoria had never heard of. I bought fresh salmon from the fish throwers. Victoria wrinkled her nose at the smell, and Sophie laughed. A street musician played guitar near the original Starbucks. Sophie tugged on Victoria's sleeve. "Can we dance?" Victoria and I exchanged glances. I shrugged. Victoria, to my amazement, took Sophie's hands and twirled her in a circle. Sophie shrieked with delight. I didn't notice the photographer until later. That evening, after I'd tucked Sophie into bed at the penthouse, she asked the question I'd been dreading. "Is Miss Victoria your girlfriend now?" "It's complicated, sweetie." "Do you love her?" I froze. "Why do you ask?" "Because you look at her like you looked at Mommy." The words hit like a physical blow. I kissed her forehead. "Get some sleep, dinosaur girl." "I like her daddy. It's okay if you do too." I couldn't sleep that night. Couldn't stop thinking about what Sophie had seen that I'd been trying not to. Monday morning, I walked into the office to find Marcus waiting by my desk. He'd never visited the creative floor before, never had a reason to. Ethan, a word. He led me to an empty conference room and closed the door. How's married life treating you? Good, thanks for asking. You know I pulled your employment file. He smiled. Copywriter. $58,000 a year before the marriage. And now you live in a $4 million penthouse. Some might call that fortunate. Some might call it love. Is that what we're calling it? He left without another word. But when I got back to my desk, there was a folded newspaper waiting. Seattle Times Lifestyle section. The photo from Pike Place Market covered half the page. Victoria, me, and Sophie. The caption read, Harrington Media CEO Victoria. Harrington enjoys family time with husband Ethan Cole and stepdaughter Sophie. Sophie's face was clearly visible. I was on the 36th floor in under 3 minutes. Victoria's assistant tried to stop me. I walked past her and into Victoria's office. You said Sophie wouldn't be involved. Victoria looked up from her computer confused. I didn't tip off any press. This wasn't... I threw the newspaper on her desk. Her face is in the paper. Victoria's expression changed as she saw the photo. Marcus, he must have hired the photographer. I don't care who you promised. She stood. For the first time, I saw genuine fear in her eyes. Not for herself. For me. For what she'd cost me. You're right, I'm sorry. First time she'd apologized for anything. I'll call our PR team. We can request they pull the digital versions. That doesn't unpublish the print edition. I know, but I'll fix this. I promise. She picked up her phone. She's all I have. I know. By that afternoon, Victoria had threatened to pull all Harrington Media advertising from the Seattle Times. She demanded they blur Sophie's face in online versions, issue a formal apology for publishing a minor's image without consent, and investigate the photographer's credentials. That evening, she knocked on my door, holding legal documents. An injunction against further publication of Sophie's image. It's done. I also contacted Google. They're scrubbing cached versions. I exhaled for what felt like the first time all day. Thank you. This is Marcus's opening move. He's going to keep pushing. Then we push back. She sat on the edge of my bed, another boundary blurring. I'm sorry I didn't see this coming. You can't predict everything. That's usually my job. She laughed, bitter. She's lucky your daughter to have you. You'd make a good parent, too. She looked startled. I wouldn't know how. Neither did I. You figure it out as you go. The next week, Victoria scheduled a wedding photo shoot. For documentation, she said. For the board. The photographer met us at a studio in Sodo. At first it was awkward. Stiff poses, forced smiles. The photographer kept asking us to get closer look at each other, pretend he wasn't there. Then I made a joke about something stupid. Victoria laughed, really laughed. The sound caught me off guard. Perfect, the photographer shouted. Don't move. I didn't know you could laugh like that, I said. There's a lot you don't know. I'd like to. The moment hung between us. The photographer captured it. Later, reviewing the proofs on her laptop, Victoria scrolled through the images. The formal poses looked fake, but that candid moment looked real. We look married, I said. Yeah, neither of us moved away from the screen, from each other. This one, she said quietly. Let's use this one for the holiday card. Your family does holiday cards. Marcus does. It's a passive-aggressive tradition. Then we'll do one too. 6 months into the contract, Helen Cross called. Harrington family Thanksgiving at the estate. The big test. Extended family board members all day. Victoria hung up and turned to me. We have to share a room there. I set down my coffee. What? The estate only has 6 guest rooms. Marcus already called dibs with his girlfriend. Everyone else will be paired. If we ask for separate rooms, they'll know. Exactly. The silence, a sigh stretched. Then I said, Okay. We're adults. We can share a room. She laughed nervously. I'll take the couch. We'll figure it out. The night before Thanksgiving, I packed in my room while Victoria packed in hers. I found myself choosing clothes more carefully than necessary, wondering things I shouldn't be wondering. The drive to Medina that Wednesday afternoon was quiet. Sophie was with my sister for the weekend, just Victoria and me in her Tesla. 6 months, I said. We're halfway. Yeah. Does it feel like 6 months to you? She kept her eyes on the road. No, it feels like yesterday, and also like forever. Yeah. Silence settled between us. Then, my phone rang. Marcus. Should I answer? Put it on speaker. I did. Hello, Ethan. Looking forward to tomorrow. Likewise. Before you arrive, I thought you should know I've hired a private investigator. Nothing personal. Just due diligence. Making sure my sister's husband is who he says he is. Victoria's hands tightened on the wheel. And, I asked, clean so far. Almost too clean. Which makes me think you're either very boring or very careful. Victoria cut in. Marcus, this is harassment. This is family. See you both tomorrow. And Ethan, hope you don't snore. Those guest room walls are thin. He hung up. Victoria pulled into a rest stop and parked. Her hands were shaking. He's fishing, she said. Does he have anything to find? The contract is buried in my personal accounts. He'd need a warrant. Could he get one? Not without probable cause. But doubt crept into her voice. We sat in silence watching cars pass on the highway. Then she reached over and took my hand. No audience. No cameras. Just her hand in mine. The Harrington estate was decorated for the holiday. 30 guests milled about when we arrived. Marcus greeted us at the door with Simone, his girlfriend, who looked like she'd stepped out of a fashion magazine. The happy couple. Welcome. Victoria's hand found mine automatically. It felt natural now. The guest room was in the east wing. Queen bed, of course. I can sleep on the floor, I said. Don't be ridiculous. We're adults. Right, adults. We both stared at the bed. Let's just survive dinner first, Victoria said. The pre-dinner cocktail hour was a minefield of small talk and careful observations. I navigated conversations with board members, complimented Victoria's leadership, played the supportive husband. One board member asked how we balanced work and home. I improvised. She works late, I wake early. We meet in the middle for coffee. It was the truth. When had that become the truth? Helen Cross watched from across the room, nodding approval. Then Marcus tapped his wine glass. The room fell silent. To family, and to new family. Victoria and Ethan, 6 months married. Congratulations. He smiled. Though I have to say, Vic, you've always been so private. It's unusual for you to move this fast. The temperature in the room dropped. Tell us, how did Ethan propose? Not in the script. Not in any of our preparation. Victoria and I exchanged a glance. A split-second decision passed between us. I took it. There wasn't a proposal, not in the traditional sense. Every eye in the room locked on me. We were in her office, late night. She was stressed about a pitch. I brought her coffee. She looked up and said, "Why are you still here?" I paused. I said, "Because you are." The room was captivated. I could feel it. And she said, "That's the stupidest reason to stay." I said, "Maybe, but it's mine." A week later, we were at City Hall. Perfect silence. Victoria added, her voice soft, "Sometimes you just know." She looked at me. Something real passed between us. Something that had nothing to do with contracts or performances. Helen raised her glass. To knowing. Marcus's jaw was tight. He'd been outplayed. At dinner, I sat across from Marcus. His girlfriend chatted with Victoria about wedding details, fishing for inconsistencies. Under the table, Victoria's foot brushed against mine. Then stayed there. My heart rate spiked. After dinner, Marcus cornered me in the library. Just the two of us, cigars, expensive bourbon. "Nice story about the proposal." "Thank you. Very romantic. Almost practiced. Some moments you don't forget." He leaned against the desk. "What's your angle, Ethan?" "Excuse me. Nobody marries Victoria without an angle. What's yours?" "Love." He laughed. "Love, right. My PI found something interesting. Your wife's medical bills. $145,000. Paid off 2 weeks after you married my sister. Convenient timing." My blood ran cold. Vic helped me. That's what spouses do. Or that's what contracts require. The silence stretched like razor wire. I know what you are, and I'm going to prove it. Back in the guest room at 11, I told Victoria everything. She was changing in the bathroom. When she emerged in silk pajamas, I tried not to notice. Failed. He knows about the debt. She stopped. What exactly did he say? I repeated the conversation word for word. Victoria paced the small room like a caged animal. He's bluffing. He can't prove the connection. Can't he, not without accessing my personal bank records? You're his sister. Could he? No, not legally. But her voice carried uncertainty. We just have to stay the course, 6 more months. Then the company is legally mine. The will's conditions are satisfied. And the question hung in the air like smoke. Divorce, as planned. Right, as planned. Neither of us sounded convinced. Midnight. We lay in bed with 6 inches between us. Maximum awkwardness. You can move closer, Victoria said. I don't bite. I shifted slightly. Good to know. Silence. Vic, yeah, the story I told. About the coffee, about staying. It was a good story. It wasn't entirely made up. I do stay because you're there. I heard her breath catch. Ethan, don't. Don't what? Don't make this real. What if it already is? Silence. Then we should sleep. But neither of us closed our eyes. I lay there in the dark, acutely aware of every breath she took, every small movement. Somewhere around 3, exhaustion finally pulled me under. I woke at 6 to pale light through the curtains, and realized Victoria's head was on my shoulder, her arm across my chest. I froze. When had this happened? Had we been asleep? Had she known? She stirred. Her eyes opened. She realized where she was, where we were. We both went completely still. Sorry, I must have... It's okay. But neither of us moved. The moment stretched. Her face was inches from mine. I could count her eyelashes. See the flecks of gold in her eyes. A knock on the door shattered everything. Breakfast in 10 minutes. Marcus's voice. We sprang apart like teenagers caught by parents. Victoria wouldn't look at me as we dressed. At breakfast, Marcus watched us like a predator studying prey, but under the table Victoria's hand found mine. Her thumb traced circles on my palm. Public display. Or something else I couldn't tell anymore, didn't want to. The drive home was silent for 30 minutes. Then, last night, she started. I know. We can't. I know. The contract. I know. Pause. But do you want to? I asked. She didn't answer. Because the answer was yes. And we both knew it. Back at the penthouse, we unloaded the car with careful distance between us. Victoria said she had work to catch up on. I said I did too. We retreated to our separate corners like boxers to neutral corners. That night at 2 a.m. I heard footsteps outside my door. They stopped, a long pause, then walked away. I stared at the ceiling. This is getting complicated. Monday morning, I arrived at the office to find an email from Marcus. CC'd to the entire board. Subject, concerns regarding CEO personal conduct. My hands shook as I read it. Evidence of impropriety. Investigation into potential fraud. Emergency board review scheduled for December 15th, 3 weeks away. My phone rang. Victoria. He's making his move. Her voice was shaking. What do? We fight. Part 4 continued. Full version. That Monday night, the penthouse became a war room. Victoria, me, and Diana Park, the corporate attorney Victoria, kept on retainer. Papers spread across the dining table like casualties of battle. Timeline. Financial records. The contract itself pulled from Victoria's safe for the first time since we'd signed it. Diana was brutally honest. Marcus needs proof of fraud to void the marriage. He'll argue you married solely to satisfy the will clause, which you did. But the marriage is legal, I said. Legal, yes. Legitimate. That's what they'll question. Diana looked between us. What's our defense? The truth, Victoria said. Diana shook her head. The truth is, you paid him to marry you. We need something better than truth. We need to prove it's real. The weight of those words settled over us. Prove it's real. The thing neither of us had been willing to say out loud. Diana laid out the strategy. Increase public appearances. Create a social media presence. We'd been too private, too careful. Find witnesses who believed the marriage was genuine. Most importantly, consistency in our story. The problem, Diana said looking at her notes, is that most of your life together is fabricated. Hotels you've stayed at together, silence. Trips, vacations. Victoria's voice was quiet. We've been busy. Make time, now. The board meets in 19 days. Diana closed her folder. You need to actually live like a married couple, not roommates playing house. After she left, Victoria poured herself a drink and stood by the windows. I joined her. We could go somewhere, she said. This weekend, San Juan Islands. I have a cabin there, private, secluded. For appearances, for evidence. She looked at me. Diana's right. We need photos. Proof we're actually spending time together as a couple. But we both knew it was more than that. The next 3 days were a blur of carefully orchestrated normalcy. Wednesday. Victoria and I had lunch at a popular downtown restaurant. We held hands across the table. She laughed at my jokes. A business colleague stopped by, congratulated us on the marriage. Victoria introduced me with pride in her voice that didn't sound entirely fake. Thursday, we attended a gallery opening in Pioneer Square. Art, we didn't care about wine, we barely drank. But we stood close, her hand on my arm, playing the part. Except it wasn't playing anymore. When she leaned into me, I felt the realness of it. The weight of her against my side, the way she relaxed into the touch. A photographer from Seattle Met snapped our photo. Beautiful couple, she said. How long have you been married? 6 months, Victoria answered. Feels like forever. She looked at me when she said it. I couldn't read her expression. Friday afternoon, we took the ferry from Anacortes. The water was gray-green under cloudy skies. Victoria stood on the deck-wind pulling at her hair. I found her there, hands wrapped around a paper coffee cup. When was the last time you took a vacation? I asked. 2019. Tokyo. Business conference. That doesn't count. I saw cherry blossoms. Between meetings. She smiled slightly. Between meetings. You? She asked. 6 months before Sarah died, we took Sophie to Cannon Beach. She couldn't walk much anymore. We just sat on the sand and watched the waves. Victoria took my hand. No cameras, no audience, just her fingers lacing through mine. That sounds perfect. The cabin was rustic luxury. Wood beams, stone fireplace, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the water, and one bedroom with one bed. We both stared at it. I can sleep on the couch, I said. Ethan, we woke up in each other's arms 3 days ago. That was an accident. Was it? She turned to face me. I'll make dinner. She could cook. This surprised me. We made pasta together in the small kitchen, drinking wine, talking about nothing important. Stories about Sophie, Victoria's childhood, dreams we'd had before life got complicated. She laughed at something I said, genuine and free. The sound filled the cabin like music. You should laugh more, I said. Give me more reasons to. The air between us shifted, charged. I should clean up, she said, standing quickly. I'll help. At the sink washing dishes, our hands brushed in the soapy water. We both froze. Victoria turned to face me. We were inches apart. Ethan, her voice was barely a whisper. Tell me to stop. I can't. The first kiss was gentle, tentative, like we were both afraid of breaking something fragile. Then it deepened, and all the careful distance we'd maintained for 6 months collapsed. We pulled apart, both breathing hard. We shouldn't have done that, I said. I know. Neither of us moved away. We kissed again, and this time there was no hesitation, no pretense, just need and want, and 6 months of denial burning away. The contract, I managed. Fuck the contract. Saturday morning, I woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and Victoria's head on my chest. Her breathing was soft and steady, real. She stirred, opened her eyes, realized where she was, where we were. We need to talk about this, she said, sitting up. I know. This complicates everything. Does it? Or does it make things clearer? She started pacing. We have a board meeting in 17 days. If Marcus finds out we're actually, what? Sleeping together, we're married. You know what I mean. If this is real, it changes the entire dynamic. It makes the contract look even more suspicious. Maybe it's been real for a while and we were too scared to admit it. I can't do scared. Scared loses companies. This isn't business, Victoria. I'd never used her full name in anger before. She flinched. Everything is business. Is that what last night was? She couldn't answer. She got up, started dressing. I watched her rebuild the walls in real time. You're running. I'm being realistic. You're being terrified. She stopped her back to me. What if we lose? What if Marcus wins and this was all for nothing? Then at least we'll have had this. She turned, tears in her eyes. I can't afford at least. We hiked later to break the tension. Lime Kiln Trail, watching for orcas. We walked in silence for the first mile. Then she stopped. I'm sorry for pushing you away. You were honest and I can't handle it. Why not? I've spent my entire life building walls. You just walked through them like they were made of paper. Maybe they were. That terrifies me. It terrifies me too. But I'd rather be terrified with you than safe and alone. Her eyes welled up. The first time I'd seen her cry. I pulled her close, held her while she shook. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. Neither do I, but we figure it out, together. We sat on the rocks, watching the water, waiting for whales that might not come. What happens after the 12 months? She asked quietly. I don't know. The contract says we divorce. Contracts can be renegotiated. She almost smiled. You're learning. An orca pod surfaced. We watched them, breach and dive surfacing from deep water. Something about the moment felt symbolic. Coming up for air after being submerged too long. Okay, she said. Okay, we try, really try, but we're smart about it. We don't tell anyone. Not yet. We get through the board meeting. We protect what we have. Then we see. That's very strategic. It's who I am. I kissed her temple. I know. We spent the rest of that day like a real couple on a real vacation, walking the beaches, reading by the fire, making dinner together. That night, lying in bed with her head on my shoulder, I realized this was what I'd been missing. Not just the physical intimacy, the peace, the feeling that someone saw me and chose me anyway. Ethan, she said in the darkness. Yeah, thank you, for not giving up on this, on me. You make it sound like I had a choice. You did. You could have walked away a dozen times. So could you. She was quiet for a moment. Then, I don't want to anymore. Walk away, I mean. Good, because neither do I. Sunday evening, we returned to Seattle. To reality. To the email waiting in Victoria's inbox, Marcus requesting a one-on-one meeting with me. Monday, 10 a.m., his office. Don't go alone, Victoria said. He'll expect that. I need to show I'm not afraid. He'll try to buy you off. I know. I kissed her. First time in the penthouse, first time not hiding. What will you say? No. Marcus's office had a view of Puget Sound. Power play setup. He offered coffee. Whiskey. I declined both. Right to business. I like that. He sat across from me. I'm going to be direct. I know about the contract. My heart stopped. Don't bother denying it. I have copies, bank transfers, the whole paper trail. How did you? Doesn't matter. What matters is what I do with this information. He slid a folder across the desk. I'm offering you a deal. Walk away. Now. Before the board meeting. In exchange, I'll pay you $500,000. Cash. Sophie's college fund. Your new start. And I'll bury the contract. No scandal, no embarrassment. He leaned forward. All you have to do is disappear. And Victoria will lose the company. But that's not your problem. You're wrong. It is my problem. Come on, Ethan. You're a copywriter. You're not equipped for this world. I stood. Maybe not. But I'm equipped to recognize a bastard when I see one. You're making a mistake. Probably. but it's my mistake to make. I left the folder on his desk and walked out. My hands were shaking in the elevator. By the time I reached Victoria's office, adrenaline was wearing off, replaced by the cold reality of what Marcus had. I went straight to Victoria's office, closed the door. Her face paled when she saw my expression. He has the contract, bank records, everything. How? He offered me $500,000 to walk away. Her voice shook. And I said no. She stared at me. You really thought I'd take it? Most people would have. I'm not most people. She almost smiled. Then Diana Park walked in with her own folder. We have something too. Diana had spent 2 weeks building a counter case. What she found was damning. Marcus had been accessing Victoria's company emails without authorization for 6 months. Eat logs proved it. He'd diverted $40,000 in marketing funds to a personal consulting project. He'd attempted to bribe Helen Cross last year with insider information. She'd declined and kept meticulous records, and the piece de resistance an affair with a junior associate named Jessica Chen while still married to his ex-wife. Jessica had filed an HR complaint that was quietly settled. Direct violation of company ethics policy. He's been sloppy, Diana said. Arrogant. He thought being a Harrington made him untouchable. Can we prove all of this? Victoria asked. Yes, but if we go nuclear, it gets messy for everyone. Messier than him exposing our contract, I asked. Diana nodded. Point taken. The next 2 weeks were brutal. Long nights at the office building the case, preparing for every possible question the board might ask. Victoria barely slept. I'd find her at 3 in the morning, still working dark circles under her eyes. You need to rest, I'd tell her. I'll rest after December 15th. Victoria, I can't lose this Ethan. It's all I have. That's not true. You have me. She'd look at me, then vulnerability breaking through the armor. For now. But if we lose, we won't. But neither of us could be sure. December 15th arrived too fast. That morning at 7, Victoria and I got ready in tense silence. She came to tie my tie, her hands shaking. Whatever happens today, she started. I covered her hands with mine. We're in this together. I'm scared. Me too. We kissed, for strength, for luck, for whatever came next. Sophie called on video chat. My sister had her for the day, told her daddy had an important work meeting. Good luck, Dad. You too, Miss Victoria. Victoria's eyes filled. Sophie smiled, gap-toothed and innocent. You can do it. You're like a T-Rex, strong. I laughed through the tightness in my throat. Where'd you learn that? Mom used to say it. After we hung up, Victoria was quiet. She would have liked you, I said. Sarah, she would have loved knowing I found this. Found you. Victoria squeezed my hand. The boardroom on the 40th floor was all glass and leather. 9 people total when we arrived. 7 board members, including Helen Cross as Chair Marcus and us. Diana sat beside Victoria as legal counsel. A court reporter sat in the corner, fingers poised over the stenography machine. The air was thick with tension. Marcus looked confident. Prepared, like a man who'd already calculated his victory. Helen called the meeting to order at precisely 9 a.m. We're here to address concerns raised by Marcus Harrington regarding CEO conduct and potential breach of fiduciary duty. Marcus, you have the floor. Marcus stood. He distributed folders to each board member with the calm precision of a surgeon making the first incision. Ladies and gentlemen, I take no pleasure in this, but I have evidence that Victoria's marriage is a fraud designed to circumvent our father's will. He laid it out methodically. The contract between Victoria and me dated 7 months prior. The bank transfer for $145,000 transferred from Victoria's personal account to pay off my medical debt. My salary increased from $58,000 to $120,000 annually. The timeline showing everything occurred within 2 weeks of our marriage at City Hall. This marriage was bought. It was designed to satisfy the marriage clause in our father's will so Victoria could maintain control of Harrington Media. She has committed fraud against this board, against our father's legacy, and against the shareholders. She is unfit to lead this company. He sat down. The board members exchanged glances. Helen Cross's face was unreadable, carved from stone. "Victoria, do you have a response?" Victoria stood. Her hands were steady, but I saw the slight tremor in her jaw, the tell I'd learned to recognize. Everything Marcus said is factually accurate. Gasps around the table. Even Diana looked surprised. I did enter into a financial arrangement with Ethan Cole. I did pay his debts. I did increase his salary. I did marry him to satisfy the terms of my father's will. She paused, letting it sink in, letting them think she was admitting defeat. What Marcus failed to mention is context. Diana distributed new folders. My father's will is antiquated and frankly sexist. It requires marriage as proof of maturity to run this company, not education, not experience, not the MBA from Wharton, or the 10 years I spent building this company from the ground up. Marriage. This clause was designed to control me, not to assess my qualifications. She rattled off statistics with the precision of someone who'd memorized every number. Revenue increase of 42% in 3 years. Expansion into 4 new markets. Client retention rate up 18%. Employee satisfaction scores at an all-time high. I have made this company what it is today. And yes, I found a way around an archaic clause that treated my personal life as a business requirement. Then she looked directly at Marcus. My brother wasn't concerned about fraud when he was embezzling marketing funds, or when he was illegally accessing my private emails for the past 6 months, a clear violation of corporate privacy laws, or when he violated company ethics policy by having an affair with a junior associate while still married. Diana presented the evidence. IT access logs showing Marcus's unauthorized entry into Victoria's email server. Financial records of the diverted marketing funds. The HR complaint from Jessica Chen, complete with text messages and hotel receipts. Helen Cross's documented account of Marcus's attempted bribery. Marcus's face went from confident to white in the span of 30 seconds. If we're investigating fraud, Victoria said, her voice cold as winter, let's investigate all of it. Helen turned to me. Mr. Cole, you've been quiet. What's your version of events? I stood. My heart hammered so hard I could feel it in my throat. This was it. The moment everything hinged on. I did take the contract. I needed the money. My wife had died, left me with crushing debt and a daughter to raise alone. When Victoria offered me a way out, I took it. That's true. I paused. The room was silent. But here's what the contract didn't account for. I looked at Victoria. Falling in love with my wife. The room went absolutely still. Yes, it started as business, a transaction, but it's not anymore. I love her. I love her brilliance, her drive, the way she takes her coffee with way too much sugar, even though I keep telling her it's terrible for her. I love how she pretends not to care, but remembers every tiny detail about the people she works with. I love how she lights up when she talks about this company, about the work she's done, the team she's built. I turned to face the board. You want to know if this marriage is legitimate? Ask me how she takes her coffee. 3 sugars, a splash of oat milk. Ask me what she reads before bed. Financial reports, and when she thinks I'm not looking, romance novels. Ask me what she's afraid of. Failure. Not being good enough. Proving her father right. My voice caught. A piece of paper started this. A contract and a desperate need, and 2 people who thought they could keep it simple. But that's not what it is anymore. It's real. It's messy. It's complicated. It's love. I sat down. Victoria was looking at me with tears streaming down her face, not bothering to hide them. Marcus stood desperate now. This is a performance. They're acting. They've had weeks to prepare this exact speech. Marcus. Helen's voice cut through like a blade. Sit down. He didn't. You're going to believe this. You're going to let them. I said, sit down. The authority in her voice was absolute. Marcus sat. Helen looked at the documents in front of her, then at Victoria, then at me, finally at Marcus. You've made serious accusations, Marcus, but you've also been accused of serious violations. These documents are time-stamped, verified by IT, corroborated by multiple sources. Those are lies orchestrated by my sister. Are you calling me a liar? Helen's voice was ice. Because I documented your attempt to bribe me personally. I have your text messages offering me insider information on Victoria's strategic plans in exchange for my vote to remove her. Marcus's face went pale. I'm calling for a vote, Helen said. All in favor of removing Marcus Harrington from the board of directors for ethics violations, breach of fiduciary duty, and corporate espionage. 7 hands rose. Unanimous. Marcus stood so fast his chair fell backward. You'll regret this, all of you. Security will escort you out, Helen said calmly. 2 security guards appeared at the door as if summoned. Marcus looked at them, then at Victoria, then at me. You chose the wrong side, Ethan. No, I chose the right person. They escorted him out. The door closed behind them with a soft click that sounded like finality. Helen waited until his footsteps faded. Then she continued. Victoria, while we've removed Marcus, the contract issue remains. The board needs time to review our legal options regarding the will's marriage clause. Several of us believe it's discriminatory and should be challenged in court. Victoria nodded, not trusting herself to speak. In the meantime, you'll retain your position as CEO. However, we require that the financial contract between you and Mr. Cole be formally dissolved within 30 days. After that, if you two choose to remain married, that will be your personal choice. But the business arrangement must end. That's fair, Victoria managed. Agreed, I added. Helen smiled slightly, something almost warm in her expression. For what it's worth, I've watched you both carefully today. I've known Victoria since she was born. I've never seen her look at anyone the way she looks at you, Ethan. Whatever this started as, I believe what you said. Sometimes the best partnerships start with the worst reasons. She stood. This meeting is adjourned. Victoria, take the rest of the day. You've earned it. The board filed out. Diana packed her briefcase, smiling. I'll prepare the contract dissolution papers. Have them ready by end of week. After she left, Victoria and I sat alone in the empty boardroom. Neither of us moved. Neither spoke. Finally, she said, We won. Yeah. Marcus is gone. Yeah. I kept the company. Yeah. She turned to look at me. Why don't I feel like celebrating? Because it's not over. Not really. We still have to figure out what we are without the contract. In the parking garage, we sat in her car for a long time before either of us could find words. You didn't have to say all that, she said finally. Yes, I did. You meant it. Every word. All of it. The coffee, the books, the fears. All of it. She turned to face me, tears streaking her makeup. The contract has to be dissolved, which means you could walk away. The debt is already paid. You could take Sophie and start over somewhere new. No complications, no baggage. Or I could stay for everything. What do you want, Victoria? I want you to stay. We kissed there in the parking garage, desperate and grateful and real. When we finally pulled apart, she was laughing and crying at the same time. We're a mess, she said. Yeah, but we're our mess. That night at the penthouse, we ordered Thai food and ate it on the living room floor, still in our formal clothes from the meeting. We should have been celebrating, popping champagne, calling friends. Instead, we sat in comfortable silence, processing everything that had happened. I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, Victoria said. Maybe there is no other shoe. There's always another shoe. I pulled her close. Then we'll deal with it, together. She rested her head on my shoulder. I've spent my whole life fighting. For respect, for recognition, for control. I don't know what happens when the fight is over. You live, you breathe. You figure out what comes next. What if I don't know how? Then we learn together. 1 week later, Diana brought the final paperwork to the penthouse. Contract officially dissolved. We were legally married, but financially separate. No more business arrangement, no more loopholes or clauses. The question is, Diana said, setting down her pen. What now? Victoria and I exchanged a glance. We'd talked about this, argued about it, circled around it for days. I should probably move out. I said the words harder than I'd expected. We should date, actually date, figure out who we are without the contract hanging over us. Panic flashed across Victoria's face. Why? Because we need to do this right. No shortcuts, no business arrangements, just two people trying to build something real. And if I don't want to wait, then tell me. She stood, paced to the window, looked out at the city we'd conquered together. When she turned back, her eyes were clear. Certain. Stay, please stay. We've done everything backwards. Started with a contract, fell in love in the middle, fought for it at the end. I don't want to rewind and do it the right way. I want to keep going forward with you, messily, imperfectly, but together. You sure? I've never been more terrified or more sure of anything in my life. Diana smiled as she packed her briefcase. For the record, I thought this was the worst idea I'd ever heard when you first hired me. I was wrong. Spectacularly wrong. After she left, Victoria and I stood in the penthouse that had become home. 6 months ago, this was a business arrangement. A transaction, a means to an end. Now it was everything. We did it, she said quietly. We actually did it. Yeah, we did. She turned to me and I saw everything in her eyes. The fear, the hope, the love she'd been too scared to name. What comes next is going to be harder, you know, she said. The real relationship. No contract to hide behind. No rules to follow. Just us figuring it out as we go. I know. Are you ready for that? I took her hand, pulled her close. With you always. We stood there as the sun set over Seattle, painting the sky in shades of amber and gold. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, questions about the future, decisions to make. But tonight we had this. We had each other. We had truth instead of pretense, love instead of contracts. And somehow, that felt like more than enough. It felt like everything. Part 5. 3 months passed like the turn of seasons. The penthouse transformed in small ways that marked the change from performance to reality. Sophie's drawings appeared on the refrigerator. Family photos replaced corporate art on the walls. Victoria's home office accumulated clutter, actual lived-in disorder that she would have never tolerated before. On a Tuesday morning in March, I found Victoria in the kitchen making coffee. She'd gotten better at it. Still terrible, but better. Sophie's birthday is next week, she said, not looking up from the French press. I know, she wants a dinosaur party. I have an idea for that. She finally met my eyes. Is it okay if I help plan it? Vic, you don't have to ask permission. I don't want to overstep. She's your daughter. She asks about you constantly. Yesterday she asked if you were going to all her school events now. Victoria's hands stilled on the coffee press. What did you tell her? I told her yes, if that's what you want. She nodded, blinking rapidly. That's what I want. Sophie's 8th birthday fell on a Saturday. Victoria went all out in a way that surprised everyone, especially herself. She hired a paleontologist from the Burke Museum to teach the kids about fossils, decorated the penthouse with dinosaurs that managed to be both educational and fun, ordered a cake shaped like a T-Rex that probably cost more than my first car. 15 kids ran through the penthouse screaming and laughing. Victoria navigated the chaos with surprising grace, helping with crafts, settling disputes over who got which dinosaur sticker. At one point, Sophie pulled her friend Emma aside. I overheard them talking. Is that your new mom? Emma asked, pointing at Victoria. Sophie looked at Victoria, who was helping another kid with a fossil mold. I don't know. Can I ask her? She walked over to Victoria, tugged on her sleeve. Victoria bent down to listen. Sophie whispered something. Victoria's face transformed. She nodded. Sophie threw her arms around Victoria's neck. Later, after the other kids had left, and Sophie was in a sugar-induced stupor on the couch, I asked Victoria what Sophie had said. She asked if it was okay to call me her stepmom. Victoria's voice was thick. I told her I would be honored. That night, after we'd tucked Sophie into bed, Victoria and I collapsed on the living room floor, surrounded by wrapping paper and deflated balloons. I've never been part of a kid's birthday before, she said. You were amazing. She's easy to love. She turned to look at me. So is her father. I kissed her, long and slow and grateful. Then I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small box. It's not my birthday, she said. Open it. Inside was a ring, not the one from the contract. Something different. Platinum with a small diamond, elegant and understated. The inscription read, "This time it's real." Victoria's hands shook as she read it. Ethan. The first ring was part of the contract. This one is just because I love you. No conditions, no clauses, just this. I slid it onto her finger. Perfect fit. She stared at it, tears streaming down her face. I love you too. First time she'd said it without qualifiers or fear. Just the truth, simple and clear. At work, things were changing too. The board officially voted to challenge the marriage clause in court. Helen Cross led the charge, arguing it was discriminatory and had no place in modern corporate governance. The lawsuit would take months, maybe years, but the outcome felt inevitable. Victoria was vindicated. The company was hers truly, hers without asterisks or conditions. And me, I got offered the creative director position. The salary was $180,000. The catch was I'd be working directly under Victoria's division. The optics could be problematic. Nepotism, accusations waiting to happen. I talked to Victoria about it over dinner at a small Italian place in Capitol Hill. It might look like favoritism, I said. You've earned this position. Your campaign's brought in 3 major clients this quarter alone. But it's your company. People will talk. Let them talk. The question is, what do you want? I thought about it. About the work I loved. About the team I'd built. About proving myself on my own merit. I want to take it, and I want to make damn sure nobody can say I didn't deserve it. She smiled. That's very you. I accepted the position. Worked harder than I'd ever worked. Within the first month, I won a pitch for a major tech company account worth $3 million annually. The whispers about nepotism died fast when the results spoke for themselves. One late night, both of us working from home, Victoria came into my office. You were right, I said, not looking up from my laptop. About what? I did earn this. I know, I'm always right. I laughed, humble as ever. She perched on the edge of my desk, the casual intimacy of the gesture still new enough to make my heart skip. Professional respect and personal love perfectly balanced. It worked because we made it work, but the past wasn't done with us yet. In late April, Helen called Victoria with news. Marcus had filed a wrongful termination lawsuit. Claimed the board had been prejudiced by Victoria's influence, demanded reinstatement or a settlement of $3 million. Can he win? Victoria asked during the emergency meeting with Diana. No, but he can drag this out for years, make it expensive, make it public. Diana laid out the options. Fight it in court, which could take 18 months and cost a fortune in legal fees, or settle, which would set a bad precedent but end it quickly. I won't pay him to go away, Victoria said. Then we fight, Diana replied. Could take years. I'd been quiet listening. Now I spoke up. Or we end this another way. Both women looked at me. Let me talk to him. Absolutely not, Victoria said immediately. He offered me money once. Maybe I can offer him something. Like what? Closure. Understanding. A way forward that doesn't destroy everyone in the process. Victoria studied me for a long moment. Then reluctantly, she nodded. I arranged to meet Marcus at a neutral location. A coffee shop in Fremont, far from corporate towers and legal offices. Just 2 people talking. He was already there when I arrived. Looked older than I remembered. Tired. The fight had taken something from him. Come to gloat? He asked when I sat down. No, I came to understand. Understand what? Why you hate her so much. He laughed bitterly. I don't hate Victoria. Then what is this about? Long pause. He stared into his coffee like it held answers. Our father trained me. For 20 years, every decision, every strategy, every late night at the office. It was supposed to be mine. I was groomed for it from the time I was 12 years old. And then he gave it to her, like I was nothing. Like 2 decades of my life meant nothing. His voice cracked. I was erased. I saw it then. Not a monster. Just a man who'd built his entire identity on a promise that was broken. I understand that feeling, I said quietly. When my wife died, I felt erased too. Like the person I was supposed to be just disappeared. Like my whole future vanished in a hospital room. Marcus looked up. Real eye contact for the first time. But staying angry didn't bring her back. And destroying Victoria won't bring your father back. It won't make him see you differently. He's gone. The only person you're hurting now is yourself. What do you want from me? Drop the lawsuit. Move on. Build something that's yours, not your father's shadow. Not defined by what he took from you or what Victoria has. Something new. And if I don't, then we all lose. You, me, Victoria. Everyone, but mostly you. Because you'll spend the next 5 years fighting ghosts while the rest of us move forward. He was quiet for a long time. Then he asked, "Did she send you?" "No, she told me not to come. I'm here because I'm tired of watching people I care about get hurt by old wounds that won't heal." "You really love her?" "Yeah, I really do." He nodded slowly, stood up, extended his hand. I shook it. "Tell Victoria she won. Tell her she can stop looking over her shoulder. Tell her yourself when you're ready." He left without another word. A week later, the lawsuit was withdrawn. Marcus accepted a position with a marketing firm in New York. Big title, clean slate, 3,000 miles from Seattle, and everything that reminded him of his father's ghost. Victoria read the email from his lawyer in silence. Then she showed it to me. "What did you say to him?" "The truth. That anger is exhausting. He listened to you." "He was ready to listen. I just happened to be there." She kissed me soft and grateful. "How did I get so lucky?" "You hired me. Best business decision I ever made." "I thought you said everything was business." "I was wrong. Some things are just love." As spring turned to summer, Sophie started spending more nights at the penthouse. Her room at my old apartment sat mostly empty. The transition happened gradually, naturally, until one day she asked the question we'd both been waiting for. "Can this be my home?" Like all the time, Victoria and I were both there. We exchanged a glance. "Would you want that?" I asked. "Yeah, I like it here, and Victoria's here." She said it so simply, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Victoria knelt down to Sophie's level. "I would love that, so much." Sophie hugged her, then me, then both of us together, her small arms barely reaching around us both. We spent the next weekend redesigning the guest room. Victoria and Sophie picked out paint colors together. Dinosaur theme, but sophisticated. Educational posters of geological eras, a growth chart on the wall. Bookshelves we assembled together, all three of us arguing over the instructions. That first night in her new room, Sophie asked Victoria to read her a bedtime story. I watched from the doorway as Victoria tucked her in, read from a book about a girl who discovered dinosaur bones in her backyard. Sophie's eyes drooped. Victoria's voice was soft, gentle, nothing like the corporate ice queen I'd met a year ago. "I love you, Victoria," Sophie said, half asleep. Victoria's voice broke. "I love you too, sweetheart." After Sophie was asleep, I found Victoria in the bathroom crying silently. I held her while she shook. "I never thought I'd have this," she whispered. "A family. People who love me not for what I can do for them, but just because. You have it now. I'm terrified I'll mess it up." "You won't, and even if you do sometimes, we'll figure it out together. That's what families do." 6 months after the contract ended, on a warm evening in July, I took Victoria back to the office hallway where we'd first collided. Late night, empty building, just us and memories. "Why are we here?" she asked. "This is where it started. You dropped your papers. I picked them up. I had no idea my life was about to change." I knelt down, right there in the hallway where it all began. Her hands flew to her mouth. "Ethan, we're already married, legally, officially, all of it. But I want to ask you anyway, not because a contract says we should, not because your father's will requires it, not because of anything except this." I pulled out a ring. Simple, elegant, everything the first one wasn't. "Victoria Harrington, will you marry me? Not for business, not for appearances, but because I love you, because you make me laugh, because you're brilliant and fierce and surprisingly terrible at karaoke." She laughed through tears. "Because I want to keep building this life with you. This messy, imperfect, beautiful life. So, will you marry me again? For real, this time, yes." She was crying and laughing at the same time. "Yes. 1,000 times yes." I slid the ring onto her finger, kissed her there in the hallway where a chance collision had changed everything. The office cleaning crew found us and applauded. We planned the wedding for late August. Small ceremony. Intimate. Just the people who mattered. Pike Place Market, where we'd taken Sophie that first time, all three of us were together. A rooftop overlooking the market in Puget Sound. 30 people. Helen Cross, Diana Park, my sister. Close friends and colleagues. Sophie, as flower girl wearing a necklace shaped like a brachiosaurus. Late summer sun. Cherry blossoms from potted trees. An acoustic guitarist playing something soft and sweet. Victoria wore a simple dress, pale blue, her hair loose the way I loved it. I wore a suit that actually fit, no longer the desperate single dad in borrowed clothes. We were different people than we'd been a year ago. Better people. The officiant was a friend of Helen's, a retired judge with kind eyes. Time for vows. Victoria went first. Her hands shook, holding the paper she'd written on. Ethan, a year ago, you were a stranger who returned an envelope. 8 months ago, you were a contract. Today, you're my husband, my partner, my home. Her voice caught. I squeezed her hand. I thought I knew what I wanted. Power, success, control. But you taught me what I needed. Honesty, vulnerability, love. I promise to always make you terrible coffee. Laughter from the crowd. To never pretend with you. To choose you every day, not because I have to, but because I want to. Because you see me, the real me, and you love that person anyway. Tears streamed down her face. Mine too. My turn. I'd memorized every word. Victoria, you offered me a deal I couldn't refuse, but what you gave me was a life I never dreamed of. You're brilliant and fierce and terrifying. She laughed. You're also kind and vulnerable, and yes, surprisingly terrible at karaoke. I promise to always see past the walls you build, to love your strength and your softness equally, to remind you every day that you don't have to earn love, you just have to accept it. I looked at Sophie, standing beside us. And I promise to build this family with you. This strange, wonderful, imperfect family we've created. The officiant smiled. I now pronounce you married, again, but really married this time. More laughter. You may kiss. We did. Long and deep and real. Witnessed by everyone who mattered. When we broke apart, Sophie was clapping. That's my parents, she announced to everyone. The word hit me like a wave. Parents, plural, not just me anymore, us. At the reception held at a waterfront restaurant, the speeches were everything. Helen Cross stood elegant and sharp. I've known Victoria since she was born. I've never seen her this happy. Not when she closed her first major deal, not when she became CEO. This, she gestured at us. This is what happiness looks like. Diana Park raised her glass. When they first hired me, I thought this was the worst idea I'd ever heard. I was spectacularly wrong, to proving that sometimes the craziest plans work out perfectly. My sister Emma spoke last. Sarah would have loved you, Victoria. She would have loved knowing Ethan found this, found you, that Sophie has this. Her voice broke. Thank you for loving them. Victoria was crying. I was crying. Half the room was crying. Our first dance was to At Last by Etta James. Cliché, maybe, but perfect. Thank you, Victoria whispered as we swayed. For what? For seeing me, the real me, for not giving up. Always. Sophie cut in halfway through wanting to dance with both of us. We lifted her between us, her feet dangling, laughing as we spun in circles. This was happiness, this small, perfect moment. That night, after the guests had left and Sophie was asleep at Emma's house, Victoria and I stood on our balcony looking out at Seattle, the city where we'd fought and struggled and found each other. 1 year ago, she said, I was standing in my office thinking I'd lost everything. And now I have everything. She turned to me. How did we get so lucky? We took a chance. A stupid, reckless, impossible chance. Best decision I ever made. Even better than hiring me, she laughed. Especially better than that. We stood there in comfortable silence watching the city lights. Then she said, Thank you for not taking Marcus's money. That day in the coffee shop. You could have walked away with $500,000 and a clean slate. That was never really a choice. Why not? Because by then I was already in love with you. I just hadn't admitted it yet. She kissed me. When did you know? The night the power went out. When we talked in the dark. You let your guard down, and I saw who you really were. That's when I knew. I knew in the park. Watching you with Sophie, seeing how you loved her. I wanted that. I wanted to be part of that love. You are. You always will be. 1 year later, on a crisp October morning, I woke to the sound of laughter from the kitchen. I found Victoria and Sophie making pancakes. Well, Sophie was making pancakes. Victoria was trying not to burn them. Daddy, Sophie ran to hug me. We're making breakfast. I see that. How's it going? Victoria held up a spatula and a pancake that looked vaguely dinosaur-shaped. Define going. I laughed, kissed her, tasted syrup and love. This was my life now. Morning chaos, burnt pancakes, a daughter who called Victoria Mom without hesitation, a wife who loved me not because a contract said she should, but because she chose to every single day. People asked me sometimes if I regretted the contract, if I wished it had started differently, more traditional, more normal. The truth was, I didn't think about the contract anymore. I thought about the woman who looked at me in a dark penthouse and admitted she was scared. I thought about the girl who asked if it was okay to have two moms. I thought about how the best things in life often started with the worst reasons, and how sometimes, when you were brave enough to take a chance on something impossible, you ended up with more than you ever dreamed possible. Later that afternoon, we were all in the living room. Sophie was reading about Triceratops. Victoria was reviewing a presentation for Monday. I was just watching them, these two people who'd become my entire world. Victoria's phone rang. She glanced at it, smiled, and answered. Hello. I watched her face change. Surprise. Then joy. Really? That's wonderful. Thank you for letting me know. She hung up and looked at me. That was Helen. The court ruled in our favor. The marriage clause in my father's will has been declared invalid, unenforceable. That's amazing. It means the company is legally mine. No conditions, no requirements, just mine. How do you feel? She thought about it. Free. For the first time in my life, I feel free. Sophie looked up from her book. Does this mean we can get ice cream? We laughed. Yes, Victoria said. This definitely means ice cream. At the ice cream shop, watching Sophie debate between mint chip and cookies and cream, Victoria took my hand. I spent my whole life building empires, she said quietly. But the best thing I ever built was this. A home, a family, a love that chose itself. Your father's will said you needed a husband to run the company. He was wrong. I didn't need a husband. I needed you and Sophie. And this messy, imperfect, beautiful life. Sophie chose both flavors. We sat outside in the autumn sun, sticky and happy and complete. The contract was for 1 year, but some deals were worth breaking, and some partnerships were worth keeping forever. That night, after Sophie was asleep, I found the original contract in Victoria's desk drawer. 47 pages of legal language that had started everything. I showed it to Victoria. Should we keep this? She looked at it for a long moment. Then she took it, walked to the fireplace, and dropped it in. We watched it burn. 47 pages of conditions and clauses turning to ash. Good riddance, she said. No regrets. Only one. That I didn't see you sooner. That I wasted so much time building walls instead of bridges. You see me now. I do, and I'm never looking away again. We stood there watching the flames hand in hand while the contract that had brought us together turned to nothing. Because we didn't need it anymore. We had something better. Something real. Something that would last long after the ashes cooled. We had love. We had family. We had each other. And that was everything. So there you have it. The year we pretended. The contract that became real. The business arrangement that turned into the love story neither of us saw coming. If this story moved, you made you believe in second chances and unexpected love, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button. Because stories like this, stories about real people finding real love in the messiest possible ways, these are the stories that matter. Drop a comment and tell me. Have you ever taken a chance on something that seemed impossible? Have you ever found love in the last place you expected? I read every single comment, and I love hearing your stories. And if you believe in love that starts with the worst reasons and ends with the best ones, smash that like button. Share this with someone who needs to hear that it's never too late for a new beginning. Because sometimes the contracts we sign are just the beginning. And sometimes the best things in life come from the chances we're brave enough to take. Thanks for being part of this journey. I'll see you in the next story.
The rain had been falling since noon, a steady curtain across the windows that turned the view of Queen Anne into blurred streaks of color. Inside the small apartment, the air smelled like garlic and tomatoes. Noah Reed stood in front of the microwave door, using his reflection as a mirror, while he smoothed the collar of his only good shirt. It did not look like a date shirt, not really. It looked like a parent-teacher conference shirt, but it was pressed, it was clean, and it was the best he had. Behind him at the kitchen table, his 10-year-old daughter had 3 glass jars lined up like soldiers. Water beaded on the outside of them, catching the yellow light from the overhead lamp. "Ava, did you poke holes in the plastic wrap?" he asked, eyes still on the crooked line of his collar. "Already did." Her voice was matter-of-fact. "If I suffocate the plants, Ms. Carter is going to give me the Dead Look Award." He turned. In each jar, a scrap of vegetable sat on cotton and water, a carrot top, a stub of celery, an onion half. Tiny pale roots were starting to reach down through the cotton. "So," he said, leaning over her shoulder, "this is how we survive the apocalypse." "This is how I prove things grow back," Ava replied. She looked up at him, dark eyes serious. "Even when people think they're trash." He opened his mouth, then closed it. Somewhere in his chest something moved. He settled for ruffling her hair. "You sure you're okay with Emily's mom picking you up?" Ava rolled her eyes in the way that meant she was secretly pleased. "We already made a plan. Movie pizza, no bedtimes. You're welcome." Noah smiled and stepped back to the stove. Pasta boiled in a wide pot. The sauce simmered in a pan thick and red, filling the kitchen with the comfort of something he knew how to do. It had been Jenna's idea. "You work too much," his younger sister had said over the phone. "You never go out. I'm setting you up. She's nice, she's single, she doesn't mind kids. You are not allowed to cancel." He had not canceled. He had cleaned the apartment, picked up his shoes from the hallway, shoved Ava's art supplies into a bin, hidden the laundry in his bedroom, where it formed its own small mountain. Now, with 7 o'clock creeping closer, his stomach felt like the pot of boiling water on the stove. The doorbell rang. The sound sliced through the soft jazz playing from the Bluetooth speaker, through the clatter of wooden spoon against pot. Noah froze. Ava looked up, eyebrows raised. "Well, she said that's your doom." "Very supportive," he muttered, wiping his hands on a dish towel. He walked down the short hallway to the front door, feeling every heartbeat against his ribs. The rain outside was louder here, drumming on the tiny balcony beyond the door. He smoothed his shirt one last time, forced his face into something like a casual expression, and opened the door. A woman stood in the hall, rainwater glistening on the shoulders of her black coat. Her dark hair was pulled back, but wisps had escaped and clung to her cheekbones. Her eyes, a cool gray-green, widened when she saw him. For a moment, both of them simply stared. "Noah," she said. His tongue felt thick. He knew that face. He had seen it in framed photos in the executive floor lobby and glossy magazine spreads about disruptive beauty brands across long conference tables when she arrived to check in on work. He heard his own voice come out thin. "Ms. Hart." Her expression flickered confusion, folding into something like disbelief. "Please tell me Jenna did not set me up with one of her brothers." He blinked. "Jenna is your yoga instructor." "She is," Elise Hart said, each word careful. "She told me she knew someone who was kind and smart and not terrifying." She forgot to add, "Works for my ex-husband." The hallway suddenly felt smaller, the air heavier. Somewhere behind him, a cartoon theme song started playing. Ava's tablet, he thought dully. The smell of garlic and tomatoes drifted out past him into the hall. His phone buzzed in his pocket. "Hold on," he muttered, dragging his gaze away long enough to fish it out. The text from Jenna lit the screen in bright blue. "Don't freak out. Original girl bailed. Elise needed a real night with a real person. You too, whether you admit it or not. Be nice." Another message appeared before he could respond. "Also, she promised not to fire you if you burn the pasta. You're fine." He could almost see Jenna's grin in the words. Noah lifted his eyes. Elise was watching him, shoulders slightly tense as if she was ready for impact. The hallway light caught on the tiny droplets on her lashes. "You got the same surprise memo I did, huh?" he said. "Apparently so." She glanced past him into the apartment, where the edge of the kitchen table was visible with its jars and loose pencils. "If I walk away now, I owe your sister 3 weeks of free classes." "That sounds like extortion." "She is very good at it." They stood there for another beat, the rain filling the pause. Behind Noah, Ava laughed at something on the screen, a bright, sharp sound. He stepped aside. "I made too much food," he said. "It would be a crime to let it go to waste." Elise's mouth curved, not quite a smile, not quite refusal. She hesitated only long enough to glance once down the hall, as if she expected Miles to step out of an invisible doorway and call this all a bad idea. Nothing moved except the rain. She stepped inside. The warmth of the apartment wrapped around her. She slipped off her coat, revealing a dark green sweater and jeans clothes that made her look younger than she did in all those stiff professional photos. Noah took the coat from her fingers, brushing damp fabric, then hung it on the hook, already sagging under two other jackets. That her Ava appeared at the end of the hallway, socks sliding a little on the wood floor. Her gaze landed on Elise and her eyes got big. "You're not what I pictured," Noah warned. "What did you picture?" Elise asked Giri, curiosity softening her features. "I don't know," Ava shrugged. "Someone who smells like perfume and hates pasta. You look like you like pasta." Elise laughed, a short, surprised sound that tugged at the corners of her eyes. "I do like pasta," she said. "And I like your jars." Ava straightened, instantly pleased. "It's my science project. I'm proving you can grow new things from scraps. That you shouldn't throw stuff out just because it looks useless." "I could use that reminder most days," Elise replied. She looked at the jars with an intensity that felt larger than vegetables. Noah said, "Aren't you supposed to be packing your bag?" "I already did. Twice." She pointed toward the stove. "You better stir that or it'll stick." Noah turned in a rush, grabbed the spoon, and stirred the pasta, pretending his pulse had not just spiked for an entirely different reason. Behind him, he heard Ava say in a stage whisper that did not bother with subtlety, "He's very nervous." I noticed Elise answered her voice, amused. He exhaled through his nose, fighting a smile as he shook the pot. The kitchen was small, but there was room for all three of them. Elise drifted closer, leaning one hand on the counter, looking at the photos stuck to the refrigerator with mismatched magnets. One showed a much younger Noah at the beach, with Ava on his shoulders, both of them sunburned and grinning. Another was a printout of Ava's last report card, a red circle around the words, "Excellent effort." "You have a lot of art," Elise said. "That's what happens when a 10-year-old discovers printer paper," Noah replied. She touched the corner of a drawing, where three stick figures stood under a tree. One of the figures had been scribbled over in darker crayon, as if erased and then replaced by something else. "Is this yours?" she asked Ava. It was, Ava said. "I'm still fixing it." Noah caught Elise's eye over his daughter's head. There was a question there, and something like understanding. He drained the pasta, the steam fogging his glasses. The water hitting the sink roared for a moment, then settled back to the softer soundtrack of rain. "Do you want water or wine?" he asked, wiping his hands. "Wine, please." Elise's answer came a little too quickly. "If that's not weird with your daughter here," Ava snorted. "You should see him after a Seahawks game. This is nothing." "I am officially ignoring that," Noah said. He reached for the bottle already breathing on the counter, filled two glasses, and slid one toward Elise. Her fingers brushed the stem, then wrapped around it. The crystal clicked softly as she lifted it. Up close, he could see the fine lines at the corners of her eyes, the ones makeup could not quite erase in photos. She smelled faintly of rain and something clean and floral. So she said, looking into his face, "This is the strangest blind date I have ever been on." "Same," he admitted. Her gaze flicked once toward the window, where raindrops chased each other down the glass. Then she turned back to him. "But I am already here," she said, "and it smells really good." He felt some of the tension in his shoulders loosen. "Okay," he said, "let's eat before the pasta proves Jenna wrong about my cooking." They moved around each other in the narrow kitchen, passing plates and forks, brushing sleeves. Ava set the table with the seriousness of someone performing a ceremony. When they finally sat down, 3 chairs around a table, meant for 2, the apartment felt smaller and brighter at the same time. Noah picked up his fork. Across from him, Elise did the same, her eyes meeting his for a heartbeat over the candles Ava had insisted on lighting. Outside, the rain kept falling against the glass. Inside, the only sounds were clinking silverware and the murmur of voices starting to find their way. By the time Ava announced she was officially full, the candle wax had begun to pool around the bases of the little tea lights. The plates were scattered with sauce streaks and stray noodles. The apartment smelled rich and warm. "This is better than cafeteria spaghetti," Ava declared. "No offense to the cafeteria." "None taken," Noah said. "I do not think the cafeteria can hear you from here." Elise smiled into her glass. "If this is what your sister meant when she said you could cook, I forgive her for not warning me properly." Noah felt his ears warm. "She oversells things." "Not this time," Elise said. Her voice had softened. "Thank you for having me, even with the surprise casting." Ava perked up. "You know Aunt Jenna from yoga, right?" Elise glanced at Noah, then back at Ava. "I do. She makes people hold the weirdest poses," Ava said. "One time she tried to get Dad to do something that looked like a broken pretzel. He almost died." "Pretty sure I just made some unfortunate noises," Noah said. "There was no actual medical event." Elise laughed at a low sound that felt like it belonged more in a living room than a boardroom. "That sounds like Jenna. She likes to see what people are capable of." "She likes to torture people," Noah said. "Same thing," Elise replied. The words hung for a second, then slid into silence. Noah felt the edge of that sentence like something sharper than a joke. Elise looked down at her plate. From outside, a car horn blipped twice. Ava straightened in her chair. "That is Emily's mom," she said. "I need my bag." She slid off the chair and padded down the hall. A bedroom door opened and shut. For a moment, it was just the clink of forks and the faint hiss of rain. Noah picked up the empty bread basket and stacked it on a side plate. "I can walk her down," he said, more to fill the space than because Elise needed to know. Elise nodded, tracing a finger along the rim of her glass. "You have done a good job," she said quietly. With what he frowned, genuinely confused. "Her," Elise answered. She gestured toward the hallway. She is bright. She is funny. She looks at the world like it is still full of possibilities. That does not happen by accident. He cleared his throat. Her teacher deserves some of the credit. And Pinterest. I doubt Pinterest packed that bag on her own, Elise said. Before he could reply, Ava emerged with her backpack slung over one shoulder, and her sneakers only half tied. Ready, she reported. Do not embarrass me at the door. I will do my best, Noah said. He grabbed his keys from the hook and followed her into the small entryway. The doorbell rang once, polite and sharp. He opened the door to a gust of wet air and the sight of a tired woman in a puffy coat waving. Hey, Noah, she said. Thanks again for letting Ava stay. Thank you for rescuing me from movie night, Noah replied. Ava zipped past him, then stopped and doubled back to where Elise stood a little behind him. It was nice meeting you, Ava said, suddenly shy. You too, Elise replied. Elise replied. Good luck with your plants. They are going to be fine, Ava said. I will show you next time. The words were tossed out lightly, as if the future were something obvious and easy. Noah saw Elise catch on that word, the flicker in her expression. Next time, Elise repeated almost to herself. Ava gave a quick wave and then dashed out into the hall, already talking about the movie they would watch. The door shut behind them, and footsteps faded toward the elevator. The apartment felt immediately quieter. Noah stood with his hand still on the knob for a second longer than necessary. Then he let go and turned back to the kitchen. Elise had gathered the plates into a neat stack at the edge of the table. She had rolled her sleeves up, exposing pale wrists and a faint line of a watch mark. You do not have to clean, he said. I will not survive if I just sit and watch you do dishes, she answered. That would be cruel. He collected the plates from her and carried them to the sink. The hiss of the tap and the clatter of ceramic filled the little space. He stacked the dishes, added soap, and let the sink begin to fill. Behind the curtain of steam for a moment, the kitchen dissolved. Another room rose in his mind. 3 weeks earlier, he had stood in front of a different door on the 28th floor of a glass tower downtown. The plaque beside it read, Miles Hart in small silver letters. Inside, the air had smelled like dark coffee and printer toner. Come and read. Miles did not look up when Noah stepped into the office. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the city in gray rain streaking down the glass. The man behind the desk was tall even while seated angles pressed into a crisp suit. Noah had always thought of Miles as a sharper version of the building itself, all straight lines and reflective surfaces. You wanted to see me, Sir, Noah said. Miles clicked his mouse, the motion small and precise. Sit. Noah sat. His palms felt damp against the arms of the chair. This was not a room where mid-level account managers were usually invited. On the shelves around them, awards gleamed under recessed lights. Photographs marked success and frozen smiles. In one of them, Elise stood beside Miles, a hand on his chest, both looking out at some unseen audience. Miles finally dragged his gaze from the screen. His eyes were a colder shade of gray than the clouds outside. How long have you been with Harborline Reed? He asked. 7 years, Noah said, since the junior program. And you have never dropped a client, Miles said. Never lost a major account, correct? Yes, Noah answered. No, that is correct. A flicker that might have been amusement passed over Miles's mouth. It vanished as quickly as it came. I need someone steady on a new account, he said. Someone who does not panic. Jenkins suggested you. The name struck like a spark. Jenkins was the head of accounts not known for casual praise. What account, Noah asked. Miles turned his screen, slightly revealing a familiar logo. Soft lettering in white against a muted color field. Lumen Bloom. Noah recognized it from store shelves and magazine ads. A clean beauty brand that had made a lot of noise a few years ago. Also, if office gossip was to be believed, the creation of Elise Hart. The brand has plateaued, Miles said. They need a reset. New line, new positioning. They have chosen us. You will lead the account team. For a moment, Noah thought he had misheard. Lead was not a word that usually came near his name. I appreciate the trust he managed. I will not let you down. You will not, Miles said. He leaned back, steepling his fingers. There is another layer to this. He did not look at the photo on the shelf, but Noah's eyes could not help sliding toward it. Elise's smile was the polished kind, the one people wore when cameras flashed. Lumen Bloom was founded by my wife, Miles said. Noah blinked. Ex-wife, Miles corrected. His jaw worked once. As of 6 months ago. The word sat between them, quiet and heavy. So, when you meet with her, Miles continued, you are not only dealing with a client, you are dealing with someone who knows this company as intimately as I do. Someone who can be persuasive when she wants something. He made the word persuasive sound like both a compliment and a warning. I understand, Noah said, though he was not sure he did. I need you to keep the boundaries clear, Miles said. We deliver our best work. We do not let personal history interfere with business. On either side. He looked directly at Noah, and for a second it felt like being held under a microscope. I have seen what happens when people confuse those things, Miles said. It costs money. It costs reputation. Sometimes it costs more than that. I will be professional, Noah said. The words tasted rehearsed, even though he had not practiced them. Miles nodded once. Good. Jenkins will loop you in on the details. You can go. Outside the office, the hallway had felt too bright. Noah remembered walking past the framed photos without looking at them, focusing instead on the pattern of the carpet, the soft hum of the building, the rain tapping against the glass. At the time, the idea of meeting Elise Hart in a conference room had seemed intimidating. The idea of seeing her in his kitchen while she rolled up her sleeves and stacked dishes had not occurred to him at all. Back in the present, the sink had filled. The water was warm against his wrists. He blinked away the image of Miles's office and shut off the tap. "You look like you were 100 miles away," Elise said, leaning back against the counter. "Sorry," he reached for a sponge. "Work stuff." "Lumen Bloom," she guessed. He paused, among other things. "So you know," she said. "Of course you do." He glanced at her. "About the account, about you and Harborline. The rest is none of my business." Her mouth twitched. "That is a very careful sentence." He turned back to the dishes. "You are my client, my boss's ex. I think careful is appropriate." Silence settled for a moment besides the soft clink of plates. "I chose Harborline," Elise said finally, because for a while, it was the only thing Miles loved that he did not try to control into the ground. "I thought that meant something about the way he respected the work here." She tapped a finger on the counter. "I may have been overly optimistic." Noah rinsed a plate, set it in the rack. "I do not know the details of your life," he said, "and I am not asking you for them, but I know this company is good at what it does. And I am good at what I do. I can promise you that much." Elise watched him for a long beat, then nodded. Something in her expression eased just a fraction. "I believe you," she said. When the last dish had been rinsed and the counter wiped, the kitchen looked almost too tidy. The candles had burned low, small mounds of cooled wax around tired wicks. "Do you want to sit for a bit?" Noah asked. "I can make coffee, or tea if Jenna has converted you." "Coffee would be dangerous at this hour," Elise said. "I have a morning meeting, but I can handle a little more wine." They moved to the small couch by the window, each with a fresh splash in their glass. Outside, the rain had thinned to a fine mist, city lights smearing softly on the wet glass. The hum of traffic from the street below rose and fell like distant surf. Elise tucked one leg beneath her, turning slightly toward him. "Does it ever feel strange," she asked, "to live this high up? With the city just there, but not quite touching you?" "All the time," Noah said. "Some days it feels like sitting in an aquarium." "With your daughter and her jars," Elise said. There was a hint of a smile. "Exactly." They fell into a quieter kind of conversation. Less about yoga and science projects, more about the shape of their days. She told him about early mornings in labs and late nights in airports. He told her about school drop-offs and agency deadlines, about learning to cook from online videos when he realized takeout receipts were eating half his paycheck. At one point she asked, "Do you ever get tired?" "All the time," he said. "But then she laughs at some dumb joke I make, and it is like someone plugged me back in." Elise looked toward the hallway where Ava's empty room waited. "I used to think I would have a life like this," she said. "A small place. Maybe a messy kid. Grocery lists on the fridge. Then I blinked and realized I had a driver, a calendar I did not control, and a closet full of clothes that looked good in photographs, but did not feel like mine." Noah found himself studying the profile of her face, the way her jaw tightened on the last words. "So you changed it," he said quietly. She let out a breath. "I tried." The clock on the microwave blinked at them in soft blue numbers. It was later than he had realized. The wine bottle was mostly empty. Elise noticed the time and straightened. "I should go," she said, though she did not immediately stand. "Yeah," he replied. "Big morning." "They are all big," she said. Then she smiled a little. "But yes, contracts, formulas, people who expect me to have answers." "You usually do," he said. She set her empty glass on the coffee table and stood. He walked her to the door. The hallway on the other side was quiet now, the air cooler. She slipped into her coat, fingers fastening the buttons. Her hair had dried in soft waves around her face. At the threshold she paused and looked back into the apartment. "This was a terrible idea," she said. "The worst," he answered. Her mouth curved. "Thank you for it." "For the terrible idea?" he asked. "For the normal evening," she said. "For pasta and candles and a kid who talks about plant roots like they are superheroes." He swallowed around a tightness he had not expected. "Anytime," he said. She shook her head. "Careful, Noah. Jenna might hear you and start scheduling." He smiled. For a second they stood closer than two people in their positions, probably should the air between them thin and fragile. Her perfume was faint, something clean that reminded him of new sheets. "Good night," she said. "Good night." He closed the door gently after her. The click of the latch sounded louder than it should. For a moment he stayed there, palm resting flat against the wood. Then he pulled it away and went to the window. From the living room he could see the narrow slice of sidewalk below. Elise emerged from the building, her figure small against the glow of streetlights. She pulled her coat tighter, lifted her face for a second into the mist, as if to test the air, then walked toward the corner, her reflection moving with her in the wet sheen of the pavement. Noah watched until she turned out of sight. The glass of the window cooled his forehead when he leaned it against the pane. In the kitchen, the jars on the table held their tiny green scraps, pale roots, reaching for something they could not yet see. On Tuesday morning, the conference room smelled like whiteboard markers and fresh coffee. The long table was scattered with notepads and printed decks, the Harborline logo printed at the corner of every page. Through the glass wall, Noah could see the open office humming quietly, designers hunched over screens, account managers on headsets, the occasional laugh slipping above the steady buzz. Inside the room, it was quieter. Jenkins stood at the far end, flipping through the handouts. Two creatives checked something on a laptop. A junior account coordinator smoothed her skirt and whispered under her breath, as if practicing lines. Noah set his notebook down in front of the big screen and tried not to stare at the empty chair nearest the door. He had slept badly. Images from Saturday night kept flickering back up every time he closed his eyes. Elise at his table laughing with a mouthful of pasta. Elise in his doorway, coat collar flipped up, eyes soft when she thanked him for a normal evening. Today there was no candlelight and no mismatched chairs. Today there was a key client and a boss watching closely. The elevator chime carried even through the glass. Noah saw two figures step out into the hallway. One was Elise in a cream blazer and tailored pants, hair smoothed into a sleek twist. The other was her assistant carrying a slim laptop bag and a leather portfolio. Jenkins straightened. The junior coordinator stopped whispering. Elise paused just outside the door as her assistant spoke into her ear. She nodded once, then pushed the door open. The energy in the room shifted. It always did when a client arrived, but this felt more concentrated, as if everyone had just sat up a little taller. Ms. Hart. Jenkins offered his hand. Good to have you here in person. Thank you, Mark. Her handshake was firm, smile practiced. Her gaze moved around the table, cataloging faces. It landed on Noah for a fraction of a second longer than on anyone else. Good morning, she said. Morning, he replied. His own voice sounded too loud to his ears. She settled into the chair near the screen, placing her phone and notebook in front of her with careful precision. Her assistant sat beside her. Jenkins gave Noah a small nod, the cue to begin. Noah clicked the remote. The first slide blinked up on the screen. Lumen Bloom's existing logo, product shots, numbers. Thank you for coming in, he said. We thought it would be helpful to walk you through some initial thinking before we lock in the direction for the new line. As he spoke, his body remembered how to do this. His voice found its usual rhythm. He walked them through the brand audit, the market landscape, the way competitors had shifted in the last 2 years. He talked about crowded shelves and tired messaging, about consumers who could spot faked authenticity from a mile away. He clicked to the next slide. Mood boards filled the screen. Skin with texture, not blurred out. Plants in soil, not in glossy studio arrangements. Colors drawn from real things, clay leaves, bruised fruit. What we keep hearing, Noah said, is that people do not want to be promised perfection. They want to be promised care. They want to see something that has been through something and come out the other side. That feels closer to what Lumen Bloom really is. He felt Elise's attention sharpen on him. It was like standing in a beam of light. What do you think we are now, she asked. The question was not hostile. It was quiet and precise, coming from somewhere deeper than a marketing brief. Noah switched off the remote, letting the slide rest on the image of a woman with freckles, eyes closed, breast turned toward an unseen sun. I think, he said slowly, that Lumen Bloom started as a conversation with real people. Then the conversation got louder and more crowded, and somewhere along the way the volume went up, but the intimacy went down. This is about getting that back without pretending the last 5 years did not happen. Silence settled for a moment. The junior coordinator stopped taking notes. Jenkins glanced sideways at Elise. Her expression was hard to read. Something flickered there, though, a flash of recognition or memory. I like the direction, she said. Continue. He took a breath he had not realized he had been holding and clicked on. The creatives jumped in with early taglines and visual routes. Elise asked pointed questions about timelines and budgets, asked for clarification on a few research points, pushed gently on bolder ideas. She was demanding but engaged. Her assistant took notes in a tidy looping script. Not once did she refer to their dinner. Not once did her voice slip from Ms. Hart into Elise. Only when Noah passed a bottle of water down the table and their fingers brushed did something unspoken pass between them. A quick glance, a slight narrowing of her eyes, then it was gone, folded back into the polite armor of business. The meeting wrapped after an hour. Jenkins promised revised concepts by the end of the week. Elise stood gathering her things. Thank you, she said. This feels promising. We will make sure it is more than that, Noah replied. She held his gaze for a moment. A faint hint of the smile he had seen in his living room tugged at one corner of her mouth. See you soon, Reed, she said. Then she was gone, walking through the glass doorway into the open office, Miles's company under her heels. Later at his desk, Noah stared at his inbox without really reading it. Subject lines blurred together. Numbers and client names swam past. Someone dropped a stack of proofs on the empty desk beside him. A phone rang in a neighboring cubicle, then stopped. His own phone buzzed. For a brief second, his chest went tight. When he looked, it was only Jenna. You alive? He typed back. Barely. She replied almost immediately. Coffee. Pike Street. You have 20 minutes if you want caffeine and gossip. He hesitated, eyes drifting toward Jenkins's glass office. Jenkins was on a call, gesturing at something on his screen. No one was waiting at Noah's desk. The Lumen Bloom notes had been saved. The morning email had been triaged. Be there in 15, he wrote. The cafe on Pike Street was already busy when he pushed open the door. Warmth rushed up at him, fragrant with espresso and baked sugar. People in beanies and headphones occupied most of the small tables, laptops open like protective shells. Jenna sat near the back, a bright blur in patterned leggings and an oversized sweatshirt with the Yoga Studios logo. Her blonde hair was twisted into a high knot. She waved a biscotti like a flag. "You look like you survived a firing squad," she said as he slipped into the chair across from her. "It was a meeting," he said. "A normal meeting." "Nothing about you is normal, big brother," she said. "Hi." She pushed a second cup toward him. His name was scrawled on the side in a barista's hurried hand. "You ordered for me," he said. "I knew you would come," she said. "You always pretend you have too much work, then you appear anyway." He took a grateful sip. The coffee was stronger than the office brew, hot and clean on his tongue. "So," Jenna leaned in, "how did it go? Did she murder you with her eyes? Did Miles hover outside the door and breathe fire?" "He did not attend," Noah said. "And Elise was professional." "Elise," Jenna repeated, amused. "You are already on first-name basis." He started to say something defensive, but a voice behind him cut in. "That is because it is my name." He turned. Elise stood beside their table, wearing leggings, running shoes, and a loose tank top, with the same studio logo as Jenna's sweatshirt. Her hair was pulled through a cap, damp at the ends. There was a faint flush high on her cheeks, the kind that came from exertion rather than makeup. Jenna sprang up to hug her. "Class warrior," she said. "You came." "I was promised real coffee," Elise said, "and the chance to stretch somewhere that does not smell like disinfectant." She slid into the third chair across the corner from Noah, so that they formed a rough triangle. She set a stainless steel water bottle on the table, then looked at him. "Read," she said. "Heart," he answered. Jenna's eyes bounced between them, delighted. "I forgot to mention," she said, "that my client and my brother now work together on this fancy skin stuff. Look at me building empires." "Very subtle," Noah said. Elise shook her head, smiling. "She is incapable of subtle." "And you love me for it," Jenna said. They talked about yoga first. Jenna mimed an impossible pose, nearly elbowing an unsuspecting man passing by with his tray. Elise described a woman in the front row who had nearly knocked herself over trying to copy her. Noah listened, sipping his coffee, watching the way Elise relaxed without her blazer, without a table between them and a logo on the wall. The conversation drifted to Seattle in winter, to favorite places to escape the rain. Jenna listed rooftop bars and crowded house concerts. Noah mentioned the tiny park by the water, where Ava liked to throw stale bread at fat seagulls. "You should try the Sunday market in Ballard," Elise said. "They have these ridiculous cinnamon rolls. It feels like cheating on every brand campaign about wellness I have ever approved." "Now we are talking," Jenna said. "Field trip. I am fairly sure your brother has actual work," Elise said. "He needs joy more than he needs email," Jenna replied. Noah watched Elise's face as she listened to his sister. The laughter came easier here, responsibility dialed down a notch. It made something in his chest ache in an unfamiliar way. A notification buzzed on Jenna's phone. She glanced down and groaned. "Of course," she said. "My noon client is early and wants to talk about chakras before class. I have to go save a girl from buying crystals she does not need." She stood, slung her bag over her shoulder, and squeezed Noah's shoulder on the way past. "You two behave," she said lightly. Then she was gone, absorbed into the stream of people, heading for the door. For the first time, Noah and Elise were alone at the table. The cafe noise filled in around them. Milk steamed at the bar. Someone laughed too loudly near the window. Outside, the sky had settled into a pale, even gray. "This is strange," Elise said. He smiled. "I am starting to think that is the theme of this week." She stirred a sugar packet into her cup, though she had not added any yet. Her fingers were long and steady. "You did well in there," she said. In the meeting, she added in case he had misread. "Thank you," he said. "You asked hard questions." "That is my job," she said. "And also my nature, according to several unhappy people." "I did not say I was unhappy," he said. Her eyes flicked up, meeting his. For a moment, there was nothing between them but the shared knowledge of Saturday night and the careful dance of this morning. "Elise," he said quietly, trying the name out loud without the Ms. Her expression softened. "Noah," she said, returning the favor. They sat like that for another few minutes, the conversation sliding into safer topics. She asked about Ava's project. He asked how often she actually got to attend yoga class, rather than cancel for work. It felt easy in a way that made him nervous. Eventually, Elise checked her watch. "I have a call in 20 minutes, she said. "If I do not leave now, my assistant will come in here and drag me out by my hair. That would be a memorable scene," he said. She stood, picked up her bottle, and adjusted the strap on her bag. For a second, it looked like she might simply say goodbye and walk out. "Do you have my number?" she asked. "I do not," he said. "Should I?" Her smile was small and a little dangerous. "For work purposes," she said. "Of course." She took his phone when he handed it to her, typed quickly, then gave it back. A new contact blinked up at him. He did not say her name out loud this time. "Thank you for the coffee," she said. "I did not pay for it," he admitted. "Jenna did." "Then thank you for the company," she corrected. She left with a nod and a small wave weaving through the tables, with the easy grace he had seen at industry events, only now in sneakers instead of heels. Noah watched her go, then looked down at his phone. A new message had arrived. Unknown number. The text said, "Next time without your sister." Noah stared at the words on his screen until the letters blurred. "Next time without your sister." He felt his mouth tilt before he could stop it. His thumbs moved on their own. "You say that like she will not track us with a GPS," he wrote. The reply came fast. "She can try. I am very good at hiding." He pictured her in the cafe cap, pulled down cheeks still pink from class. He imagined what it would be like to sit across from her without Jenna narrating everyone's aura. "When do you escape meetings?" he typed. There was a pause this time. He forced himself to drink some of his coffee instead of staring at the typing bubbles. Thursdays, she wrote, 11:30, if you can also escape your overlords. Jenkins might call that hour flexible. Miles would not. Noah looked at his calendar. The square for Thursday was already crowded with blocks of color. A quick call here, an internal review there. Nothing that could not be moved if he was motivated. I can make Thursday work, he wrote. Good, came the answer. I know a place. Back entrance off an alley on 3rd. It looks questionable. The food is worth it. Her final message was an address and a time. He saved it, heart-thumping an uneven rhythm. On Thursday, the sky was a flat sheet of white, the kind of day that made the whole city feel like it was inside a light box. Noah left the office with a notebook under his arm as camouflage. Outside, the air smelled like damp concrete and roasted nuts from a food cart on the corner. The restaurant was exactly as she had described. The front on 3rd was all fogged glass and chipped paint wedged between a pawn shop and a print place that advertised cheap banners. The host barely glanced at him when he came in, only jerked his chin toward the back. Your friend is here, the man said. The back room held 4 tables and a framed photo of someone famous Noah did not recognize. Elise sat at the table in the far corner, under a crooked painting of a boat. Her blazer hung off the back of her chair. She wore a simple black sweater and dark jeans. Her hair was down the ends, brushing her shoulders. You found it, she said when he approached. The directions were very clear, he said. Walk past 3 places that look like they will give you food poisoning and stop at the one that actually feeds you. That is the tagline here, she said. They do not put it on the door for some reason. The waitress brought menus and water, then disappeared. The clatter of plates and the murmur of other conversations filled the small space. Noah could feel his pulse settling into something steadier as they fell into easy talk. They ordered without much thought, trusting Elise's just get the special rule. When the bowls arrived, steam rose in fragrant coils. He could not say whether it was the food or the company that made the hour pass faster than he wanted. It became a pattern, not every Thursday to avoid making a rhythm too visible from the outside, but often enough that the staff started to recognize them. Sometimes they met at that back table. Sometimes they picked another small place, always the ones with back doors, with dim corners, with handwritten menus that nobody photographed for their feeds. At work, they behaved like a lead and a client. Emails were concise, meetings were focused. If anyone noticed that Noah was more prepared than usual for the Lumen Bloom calls, they chalked it up to ambition. Once as he walked Elise and her assistant to the elevator, the polished doors reflected their small procession back at them. Elise in front, calm and composed. Noah beside her carrying a folder. The assistant trailing with a tablet. It looked like any other agency day. The conference room is not as intimidating as Miles made it sound, Elise said quietly, pressing the elevator button. That is my personal brand, Noah said, making conference rooms less intimidating. She almost laughed. The elevator dinged. The door slid open. She stepped inside, then turned to him with a look that did not belong to the professional corridor. Text me about the revised copy, she said. Will do. Her hand brushed his arm light and quick before she faced front again. The doors closed on her profile. At home, life moved around their secret routine. Ava's weeks filled with spelling tests, art projects, and soccer practice. One Friday, she burst through the door, waving a crumpled flyer. Sleepover at Emily's, she announced. Saturday night. Can I go? Please. We are going to eat junk and watch terrible movies, and I promise not to learn any bad words. You already know all the bad words, Noah said, taking the flyer. I promise not to use them, she amended. The flyer was simple enough. Parents' numbers, drop-off time, pick-up time. He checked his old habits and found no reason to say no. That works, he said, as long as you turn in your science project on time. Ava gasped. You doubt me. He glanced at the table where the jars now held not just scraps, but actual green shoots. The carrot top had erupted into a fan of feathery leaves. The onion had grown a tall, straight stalk. That plant is doing better than I am, he said. You apparently do not need my help. She grinned. No argument here. Saturday turned out clear and cold, the sky a hard blue. He dropped Ava at Emily's house, watched her run up the walkway with her overnight bag bouncing against her back, then stood for a moment on the sidewalk with his hands in his pockets. The apartment felt strange when he went back to it. Too quiet. The mess looked deliberate, like a set dressed to resemble a lived-in home. He should have used the time to answer the emails he had ignored all week. Instead, he found himself staring at his phone. Are you free tonight? He typed. He watched the 3 dots blink in the message window for what felt like a full minute. Yes, she wrote. Are you? He looked around his living room, the couch, the shelf with the mismatched mugs, the jars on the table lit by the slanting afternoon light. I am, he wrote. Ava is at a sleepover. There was another brief pause. Dangerous combination, she wrote. Where are you? Home, he replied. Her next message came quicker. Send me your address. He hesitated for half a second, then sent it. The act felt simple and enormous at once. She arrived just after 7. He heard her before he saw her, the soft thud of footsteps on the hallway carpet, then the doorbell. He opened to find her holding a small terracotta pot with both hands. This was sulking in my office, she said. I thought your window might make it happier. The plant was some kind of herb, small green leaves clustered on thin stems, soil still damp. You did not have to bring a housewarming gift, he said, stepping back to let her in. It is not a housewarming gift, she said, towing off her boots. It is a joint custody arrangement. She moved through the apartment with easy familiarity, setting the pot on the table near Ava's jars. She will like this, Noah said. She already told me its name, Elise replied. She texted it to me 3 days ago. He blinked. She has your number. Relax, Elise said, amusement dancing in her eyes. She stole your phone at some point and decided we should all be friends. The plant's name is Captain Leaf. Noah covered his face with one hand. Of course it is. The night slipped into its own rhythm. He chopped vegetables in the kitchen, while Elise leaned against the counter and stole pieces from the cutting board. They listened to music from her phone, something soft and low, that threaded through the clatter of pans. You cook a lot for someone who works the hours you do, she said. I got tired of hearing Ava complain about takeout, he answered. So, I learned. What did you feed her before? Cereal. She smiled. You survived this long on cereal and agency coffee. That is almost impressive. Dinner was easier than the date had been. There was no expectation hovering over the table. No unknown profile from a dating app to decode. Just two people trading stories about disastrous first jobs and strange office parties. After they ate, they ended up on the couch side by side, a bowl of popcorn between them, and a movie half-watched on the screen. At some point, Elise drew her legs up and tucked her feet under her. Her shoulder brushed his arm. His heart seemed to move closer to his ribcage just to be nearer to her. On the coffee table, the new plant in Ava's jars sat in a crooked line. The television reflected faintly in the glass colors moving over green leaves and clear water. This is the most domestic I have been in a long time, Elise said, eyes still on the screen. You pull it off, Noah replied. She tilted her head, resting it briefly against the back of the couch. Do you ever miss having more chaos, more people? I have a 10-year-old, he said. There is no shortage of chaos. You know what I mean, she said. He thought about the emptiness of the apartment whenever Ava was gone, the way his footsteps echoed just a little louder. Sometimes he admitted, me too, she said. The movie droned on, mostly forgotten. The room was dim except for the flickering light from the screen and the soft glow from the kitchen. Rain had returned while they were eating, tapping at the glass in a lazy rhythm. He did not know who moved first. One moment they were sitting with a polite gap between them. The next, his arm was along the back of the couch behind her, her body angled slightly toward his. She smelled like whatever lotion Lumen Bloom had not yet released, something warm and clean. She turned her head to say something, and the words never made it out. They kissed quietly at first, as if they were afraid of waking someone. Her lips were cool from the wine, then warmer. His hand slid from the back of the couch to her shoulder, then to the small of her back. She made a small sound in her throat that he felt everywhere. The world narrowed to the square of the couch, to the sound of their breathing, and the rain. The movie reached some loud climax and rolled into credits without either of them noticing. When they finally broke apart, both of them laughed once softly, like they had just been caught doing something slightly forbidden. This is probably a terrible idea, Elise said. Her voice sounded different, rougher. Probably, he agreed. She traced a finger along his wrist, just above where his pulse jumped under the skin. You are my agency, she said. I am your client. I was married to your boss. There is an entire HR manual somewhere that would have a heart attack right now. I know, he said. He should have said more. He should have laid out boundaries and policies and all the reasons this was complicated. Instead, he looked at her, at the way her eyes reflected the muted light, and felt something that drowned out every cautious thought. She leaned in again, and the argument dissolved on his tongue. Later, when the popcorn had gone stale and the rain had lightened to a mist, they sat with their legs tangled, her head on his shoulder, his hand resting lightly on her knee. Their breaths had synced without their consent. Elise reached out and touched the small terracotta pot on the table. If this plant dies, she said, Ava will never forgive me. It will not die, Noah said. She will take it as a personal challenge. He looked at the slender stems at the new leaves beginning to unfurl, and felt an odd kinship with that fragile insistence on growing toward whatever light it could find. The first time they woke up together, the light was barely there. Gray seeped in around the edges of the blinds, soft and hesitant. Noah blinked at the ceiling, momentarily disoriented by the weight against his chest. Then he felt the slow rise and fall of Elise's breath, and everything rearranged itself into focus. Her hair was a dark spill on his shoulder. One of her hands lay palm down on his stomach, fingers curved slightly, as if she had fallen asleep in the middle of reaching for something. The blanket was twisted around their legs. The room still held the faint smell of roasted vegetables and red wine. He glanced at the digital clock on the nightstand. The numbers glowed 6:07. Too early, he muttered. Elise made a small sound that might have been agreement. Her eyelashes fluttered. For a moment, she looked completely unlike the woman who walked into conference rooms with a folder under her arm and expectation in her eyes. Here, there were no sharp lines, no controlled angles, just softness and sleep. You are staring, she said without opening her eyes. You snore, he said. I do not. Only a little. He shifted to see her better. It is cute. She opened one eye at that. Use that word again, and I will deny you access to any future samples. He smiled, threat noted. She sighed and rolled onto her back, stretching slowly, the sheet sliding low on her ribs. His breath caught for a reason that had nothing to do with the early hour. You have to pick up Ava at 9, right? She asked. Yeah. He let his hand rest on her arm. "You have a whole empire to run." She stared up at the ceiling for a second before answering. Something like that. He wanted to say, "Stay, ignore the world for one more hour." Instead, he said, "We have time for coffee." Her head turned. The look she gave him was small and warm and a little sad. "That sounds dangerous," she said. "More dangerous than what we already did." They did it anyway. He pulled on sweatpants and she put on his t-shirt while her dress hung over the back of a chair. They stood in the kitchen with mismatched mugs, bare feet on the cool floor. Captain Leaf and the school project jars shared the table, a little forest of persistence. "This plant is definitely happier here," Elise said, pinching a tiny leaf between her fingers. "That is because Ava talks to it," Noah said. "She gives motivational speeches." "She texted me one," Elise replied. "It included 3 emojis and a threat against anyone who forgets to water him." He winced. "Sorry." "I liked it," Elise said. She tilted her head. "She is very sure of what deserves to survive." He studied her face as she looked at the plants, the lines at the corners of her mouth, the way she frowned when she was thinking hard. The urge to tell her things he had not said out loud to anyone in years pressed against the back of his throat. Instead, he washed 2 coffee cups and handed her back her dress. By the time he dropped Ava off that morning, there was no trace of Elise in the apartment, except for the terracotta pot on the table and the faint dent in the pillow beside his. It felt impossible that anyone else could not see the difference. They fell into a new kind of routine after that. There were the anchored moments he could count on, like the way Elise's name would light up his phone in the middle of the afternoon. "How is the copy coming?" she would ask. Drowning in adjectives, he would answer. She sent him photos sometimes. A shot of a lab bench with rows of bottles, all in different shades of pale. A close-up of a production line where thousands of empty glass jars moved in perfect rhythm. Once a blurry image of an airport gate captioned, "I hate these places," followed by a picture of Captain Leaf on her office windowsill. When she got back, captioned, "This is better." Ava somehow found ways to insert herself into their digital thread. She would borrow Noah's phone and send Elise updates on the science project, pictures of new roots and tiny green shoots spelled with too many exclamation marks. "Look," she wrote one night, attaching a photo of the carrot top now wearing a crown of feathery leaves. "It is coming back to life. Told you." Elise replied, "See, you were right. Things can grow again." At the office, the lines stayed sharper. Noah and Elise sat across from each other, with a table between them and other people in the room. They argued about placement on packaging and the merits of longer versus shorter taglines. She pushed for bolder claims. He warned about regulatory red tape. They both pretended these were the only negotiations that mattered. Once during a late review, the overhead lights reflected them back in the glass wall of the conference room. On the far side of the glass, the city blurred past lights smearing red and white. Inside, their reflections stood closer than their real bodies, superimposed over the rows of cubicles. "Do you ever feel like you are watching yourself live a different life?" Elise asked suddenly, eyes on their mirrored versions from the wrong side of the glass. He followed her gaze to the reflection of himself, tie loose in posture, careful. "Sometimes," he said, "usually around budget season." She smiled at that, but there was something behind it that did not quite lift. At home, on the nights when Ava was sprawled across the couch with a book and a snack bowl, life felt almost normal. Homework, dinner, arguments about how much screen time counted as too much. On other nights when Ava slept at a friend's or stayed late for a school event, the apartment shifted into something else entirely. One Tuesday, after they had been stealing lunches and evenings for weeks, Elise came over with a paper bag that smelled like yeast and sugar. "What is that?" he asked, taking her coat. "Evidence," she said. "I bribed my operations director with cinnamon rolls so she would stop asking why I leave early on some afternoons." He peeked inside. Sticky frosting glistened. "This looks like something your marketing team would forbid you to eat on camera." "That is why I eat it here," she said. They sat on the floor with their backs against the couch, plates balanced on their knees. Powdered sugar dusted the front of her blouse. He reached over and wiped a dot off her cheek with his thumb. "You missed a spot," he said. She caught his wrist before he could pull back, fingers folding gently around it. For a moment, their eyes locked, all humor gone, replaced by something that felt more like gravity. "Noah," she said. He swallowed. "Yeah. How are you doing?" Her voice was quiet. The question sounded too simple for the weight it carried. He tried to play it off. "I have had worse Tuesdays." "That is not what I mean," she said. He stared at his half-eaten pastry, at the layers of dough and sugar. The truth sat just under his skin, restless and hot. "I keep waiting for someone to knock on the door and tell me this is over," he admitted. "That you changed your mind, that Miles called you, that Jenkins figured it out, that HR wants to see us both." "And if none of that happens," she asked, "what then?" He searched her face, wanting to read the answer there. "Then I do not know what to do with the fact that my life suddenly includes you," he said, "because that was never in the plan." Her fingers tightened on his wrist. "Was your life working out exactly as planned?" "No," he said, "but it was predictable. And you liked that." He thought of the years since Ava was born, the narrowness of his world, the way everything had oriented itself around safety and schedules, the way he had convinced himself that wanting more was selfish. "I liked knowing I could take care of her," he said. "I still do." She nodded. "Good," she said, "because that is one of the first things I noticed about you. What my devotion to spreadsheets, he tried. Your devotion to her, she said. Silence stretched between them, the kind that asked to be filled with something honest. I am not sure where I fit into your world, he said finally. You have this company and investors and public statements. You go to events where people wear suits that cost more than my rent. You were married to a man people write business profiles about. I am a mid-level account manager with a kid and a second-hand couch. You are not a line on a company org chart to me, she said. You never have been. He opened his mouth, but she went on. Do you know what it was like, she said, being married to Miles? I do not mean the public part. That was easy. You put on the dress, you say, the lines, you let people take pictures. I mean the part where you wake up and realize every appointment in your day was arranged by someone he pays. Every decision you make is evaluated according to how it reflects on his idea of success. He stayed very still, cinnamon roll forgotten. I used to stand in our closet and stare at the clothes, she continued, eyes unfocused. Row after row of things that photographed well. That looked powerful. Nothing that felt like something I had chosen just because it made me happy. My life was a campaign with no off switch. She blinked, came back to him. When I started Lumen Bloom, I told myself it would be different, she said. A company that did not lie to people, that did not tell them they had to erase themselves to be worthy. Somewhere along the way, even that became part of the same performance. Investors' growth charts, expectations. He heard the strain in her voice. It matched something in his own chest he had never had language for. You were the first person in a long time who did not look at me like I was an extension of a man or a brand, she said. You asked how I was, as if the answer mattered. That is why I am here eating illegal cinnamon rolls on your floor. He let out a shaky breath. I thought you were just here for my cooking. That too, she said softly. He turned his hand where she still held his wrist, letting their fingers lace together. The contact steadied him. I am falling for you, he said. The words dropped into the room heavier than he expected. He had not planned to say them. They came anyway, pushed past the dam of every careful calculation he had been making for weeks. Elise inhaled once sharply, her thumb pressed into his pulse point. Noah, she said. He went on because now that he had started, he could not stop. And it scares the hell out of me, he said, because this is the worst possible situation to be in love in. Because if Miles finds out, he can ruin both of us. Because if it falls apart, I do not know what it does to Ava, to her sense of what is safe. Because I do not know if I am a detour for you or something that lasts, and I am afraid to ask. He laughed once, short and humorless. I told myself it was just a stupid crush on someone way out of my league, that it would pass. It is not passing. Her eyes were bright now, but not from laughter. There is nothing just about you, she said. He looked at her confused. You said that, she continued, that you are just a mid-level manager, just a dad with a mortgage. There is nothing just about that. You are the person who leaves work early to make sure your kid gets picked up on time, who learns to cook when it would be easier to give up and order takeout every night, who listens when I say I am tired instead of telling me to push through it for the sake of the deal. She shifted closer, their knees knocking. I am not looking at you as a rebellion against Miles, she said. I am not 19. I do not need a bad decision to prove I can make my own choices. I want you, because when I am with you, I feel like a version of myself I can stand to be around. That has not been true in a long time. He searched her face, trying to find any hint of pity or guilt. There was none, only a kind of quiet certainty. I am falling for you too, she said. The tightness in his chest eased and tightened all at once. You do not have to say that. I know, she said. I am saying it anyway. He let out a breath that felt like it had been stored for years. Okay, he said. Okay, she echoed. They sat there, hand in hand, the remains of their cinnamon rolls balanced precariously on their plates. This does not magically make any of the rest of it easy, he said. No, she agreed. There is still Miles. There is still the account. There is still your daughter, who would absolutely stage a protest if we hurt her feelings. He pictured Ava, arms crossed, standing guard over Captain Leaf, and almost laughed. But for me, Elise said, it means I am willing to figure it out, even if it is messy, even if it is risky. He squeezed her hand. I do not know how to do casual for what it is worth. Good, she said. I am tired of casual. Later they moved to the couch, abandoning the plates on the coffee table. They sat pressed together, the city a dim blur beyond the window. The glass reflected them back, two figures on a worn sofa, framed by plants and the faint glow of the television screen. From this angle, they did not look like a CEO and an account manager or a client and a vendor. They looked like two people trying to carve out a small patch of space where they did not have to pretend. Elise rested her head on his shoulder. He turned his cheek against her hair. You know this could blow up in our faces, he said quietly. I know, she murmured. Some things are still worth choosing. He felt her hand find his again where it rested on his leg. Their fingers tangled in instinctive knot. Outside, the rain returned, soft against the glass, tracing lines that caught the streetlights and carried them downward. Inside, their reflections stayed where they were, steady and close, as if for the moment at least, the glass between who they were and who they wanted to be had thinned. The weeks that followed did not fall into a neat pattern so much as a careful shuffle. Some days Noah barely saw Elise except in passing at the end of a corridor, a quick nod before one of them disappeared into a meeting. Other days they spent an hour in a conference room, arguing over adjectives. Then later that same evening, curled on his couch, while a crime show played unwatched in the background. At work, life accelerated. Lumen Bloom's new line moved from mood boards to mock-ups, from concept to formulas in small frosted jars. There were timelines pinned to project boards, deadlines circled on calendars, names assigned to each stage like little flags marking points of no return. One afternoon, Noah walked into the design pod and found half the creative team gathered around a monitor. "Check this out," one of the designers said, zooming in on a 3D render of the new packaging. "Hart is going to love this." Another snorted, "Hart is going to rip it apart until it barely resembles this. Then she will love it." "Do not stress," Tyler added from his chair, spinning a pen between his fingers. "Reed has her tamed." The words were light, meant as a joke. They landed wrong in Noah's chest. "I doubt anyone tames her," Noah said. "She just likes things done right." Tyler smiled without malice. "Lucky we have you then." On the surface it was nothing. Banter. Underneath, Noah felt the tremor of something that made him stand a little straighter when he walked back to his desk. Elise grew more visible around the office as the launch approached. She spent hours at Harborline reviewing copy, fine-tuning visuals, sitting through test group summaries. People who had once spoken about her only as a name attached to an account now used her first name in the kitchen while they poured coffee. "She is intense," one media planner whispered to Noah while they stood by the fridge. "In a good way, like she sees 10 steps ahead." "She knows what she wants," Noah said. "No wonder Miles looks like he swallowed a lemon whenever someone mentions Lumen Bloom," the planner added. Noah gave a non-committal sound and focused on the coffee machine. Miles had begun to loom more often too. He attended more of the Lumen Bloom check-ins unannounced. He started stopping by Noah's desk without warning, leaning against the edge, while Noah scrambled to close unrelated tabs. "How are we doing on timing?" Miles asked one Thursday, his tone casual, his eyes anything but. "On track," Noah answered. "We are finalizing the second wave of messaging this week. Design is already ahead on assets." And Hart, Miles asked, as if asking about a vendor, not a person he had once lived with. "She is happy with the direction," Noah said. "She is giving clear feedback." Miles's mouth twisted slightly. "I am sure she is." He picked up a stress ball from Noah's desk, a round foam thing branded with an old client logo, and turned it over in his hand. "Make sure she does not start using you as a therapist," Miles said. "That is not part of our service package." "I keep it about the work," Noah replied. Miles looked at him for a long second, then dropped the stress ball back onto the desk. "See that you do," he said, and walked away. Noah watched him go, a tightness in his stomach he could not quite drink away with office coffee. He thought of how easily Miles spoke about lines and boundaries, about what belonged to whom. He wondered how much of that came from experience that had nothing to do with marketing. At home, the plants made their slow, stubborn progress. Captain Leaf had outgrown his first pot and graduated to a larger one. Ava insisted on the ceremony of the transfer, narrating the process as if the herb were a contestant on a reality show. "New home, new opportunities," she said, patting the soil. "Do not let it go to your head." Elise laughed and brushed dirt off her fingers. Their hands bumped in the pot, both of them reaching to straighten the stem. "Careful, Elise." "He has a big future." "Like Dad's campaign," Ava replied. "And your brand, and my project, we are all in a growth arc." Noah watched them from the kitchen doorway, dish towels slung over his shoulder. For a second their heads were bent together, hair almost touching, focused on the fragile green thing between them. The sight made his chest tighten in a way that was both terrifying and deeply right. Later that night, after Ava had insisted on explaining how chlorophyll worked, before she would get into bed, Noah and Elise lay in the half-dark, the blinds open enough to show a slice of city light. "I have to go to New York next week," Elise said, voice low. "Investor meetings, product walkthrough." "How long?" he asked. 3 days, maybe 4. She traced a small circle on his chest with her fingertip, drawing invisible spirals. "Try not to burn the place down while I am gone." "The office or the apartment?" he asked. "Either," she said. He smiled into the dark. "I will do my best." When she was away, the absent sat in small, specific spaces. In the way his phone stayed on the table, a little closer to his hand. In the way he looked up at the office door, expecting to see her, only to remember she was in a conference room, 3 time zones away. In the way Captain Leaf's leaves drooped slightly until Ava scolded him back to attention. She sent photos of New York high-rises of tiny hotel shampoo bottles, lined in a neat row of a room service tray where she had eaten exactly half of everything. "Wish you were here to eat the rest," one message read under a picture of a half-demolished burger. "Be careful what you wish for," he wrote back. When she returned, she brought Ava a keychain shaped like the Statue of Liberty and brought him a small vial of a scent that had not yet been named. "Smell," she said, handing it over in his kitchen. He opened the bottle and inhaled. It was clean, with a hint of something warm underneath, like skin after a day at the beach, once the sunscreen had faded. "It smells like sunlight on purpose," she said. "I told R&D no flowers this time. Real skin, real warmth." He closed the bottle carefully. "You need a name for it." "I thought about calling it Beginning," she said. He raised an eyebrow. Is that not a little dramatic? Better than calling it Chemical Compound 12B, she said. Besides, beginnings are underrated. Work tightened its grip as launch milestones loomed. The campaign presentation for the executive sign-off drew closer. Pressure seeped in around the edges of every conversation. One Friday, Jenkins called Noah into his office. The account director's desk was cluttered with printouts, sticky notes fanned like feathers around his monitor. "Sit," Jenkins said. "Relax, you are not in trouble." Noah sat. The reassurance did not completely land. "You are doing solid work," Jenkins said. "Lumen Bloom is happy. Miles is not yelling. These are all good signs." "That is a very low bar," Noah said before he could stop himself. Jenkins snorted. "You did not hear it from me." He sifted through a stack of papers, then looked up again. "I just want to remind you," Jenkins said, "that the bigger the account, the more eyes on it. People watch how you handle it. Clients, leadership, people who have a say in promotions." "I know," Noah said. "I also know you are juggling a lot," Jenkins added. "Single-parent, high-profile project, legendary control freak in the corner office. Just remember, we are in a glass building. People see more than you think." The words were not delivered with any edge, but they landed like a warning anyway. "Understood," Noah said. Jenkins nodded, apparently satisfied. "Now, go tell creative they cannot use microscopic type on a billboard. I do not care how elegant it looks on their screens." As Noah walked back to his desk, he glanced at his reflection in the office windows. The glass threw back his image faint and doubled. He straightened his tie without touching it, as if posture alone could hide the worry he carried around like an extra organ. Elise suggested the bistro by the lake. "It is far enough from downtown," she said on the phone, "that no one from Harbor Line is going to stumble in on their lunch break. People here think anything north of a certain line is the wilderness." The place was small, with a view of the water through a wide window. Wooden chairs, chalkboard menu, faded frame posters of Italian cities on the walls. The air smelled like yeast and rosemary. They met on a Sunday, technically not a workday, technically safer. He arrived first and took a table near the back half facing the door. The lake outside was a flat stretch of steel, a few boats cutting thin white lines on the surface. When Elise walked in, he felt the room shift. She was dressed simply in dark jeans and a navy sweater, sunglasses pushed up on her head. Her hair was loose, hanging over her shoulders. She carried no laptop, no folder, no visible weight except the one he knew she always wore somewhere behind her ribs. "You found my secret," she said, sliding into the chair across from him. "I am honored you shared it," he said. The waitress brought water and menus. They ordered without much fuss. When the food came, it was all warm bread and bright olive oil, bowls of pasta that tasted like someone's memory of a childhood kitchen. For a while it was easy. They talked about everything but work. Ava's latest obsession with a graphic novel series. Elise's attempts at jogging along the waterfront before dawn. The way Seattle drivers forgot how to function the second there was half an inch of snow. Outside the window, the light shifted slowly. Couples walked along the path by the lake, bundled in coats, fingers laced. A dog in a bright yellow raincoat trotted past, ears flapping. Noah forgot to worry for a while. The restaurant was far from downtown, from the shiny glass and muttered gossip. Nobody here cared who Elise was beyond the woman at table 6 who tipped well. He had just taken a sip of wine when the tiny hairs at the back of his neck rose. Someone had said his name, softly like a question. Noah. He turned his head. Tyler stood by the entrance A to go, bag in his hand, scarf still looped around his neck. His hair was damp from the mist outside. Surprise flashed across his face, followed quickly by something like calculation. "Hey," Tyler said, recovering fast. "I did not know you came all the way up here." Noah's brain scrambled for something that did not sound like panic. "Checking out a place for a potential client lunch," he said. His voice sounded almost normal. "Market research." Tyler's gaze flicked from Noah to Elise and back again. "Right," he said. His eyes widened a fraction as recognition landed. "Ms. Hart, I am sorry I did not see you at first." "That is all right," Elise said. Her tone was smooth, pleasant. "Good to see you, Tyler, is it?" "Yes," Tyler said. He shifted his grip on the bag. "We met in the conference room last month." "I remember," she said. Her smile was polite, professional, with just enough warmth to be convincing. There was a brief pause. It stretched just long enough to make the air thicken. "Food here is great," Tyler said. "Good choice for market research." "We will keep that in mind," Noah replied. Tyler nodded. "See you on Monday." "You too," Noah said. He watched Tyler walk out, shoulders slightly hunched against the damp. The bell over the door chiming softly as it closed behind him. Through the window, he saw Tyler glance back once before heading down the sidewalk. Elise's fork hovered over her plate for a moment before she set it down. "Well," she said quietly. Noah exhaled slowly. That was not ideal. No, she agreed, it was not. They sat for a moment in the muted clink and murmur of the restaurant. The smell of basil and butter felt suddenly too rich. "He might not think anything of it," Noah said. "We do meet clients for lunch. It is not illegal." "It is not illegal," Elise said, "but it is memorable." He pushed his plate away, appetite evaporating. "Do you want to leave?" he asked. She considered. "Leaving in a rush might be more memorable," she said. "We can finish. Then we decide what to do if this finds its way to the wrong ears." He nodded. They picked at their food, both of them eating mechanically. The earlier ease had drained from the table, leaving only the brittle shell of conversation. Outside, the lake lay calm. Inside, Noah could feel a different kind of weather gathering, invisible but impossible to ignore. They stayed long enough to make it look normal. Elise finished half her pasta and pushed the rest around the plate. Noah paid the bill while she went to the restroom. When they stepped outside, the air by the lake was cool and smelled faintly of wet stone and pine. For a moment, they stood side by side on the sidewalk, watching the wind drag small ripples across the water. Lights from the houses on the opposite shore flickered in the gray surface. "Do you want to ride?" he asked. "I drove," she said. "I might need the illusion of control." He huffed a laugh that did not quite reach his eyes. "Text me when you get home." "I will." She reached for his hand, then thought better of it, and closed her fingers around the strap of her bag instead. "We knew there were cracks in the glass," she said. "We just saw one up close." "Tyler likes gossip," Noah said, "but he also likes his job. Maybe this will stay dinner conversation." "Maybe," she said. Neither of them sounded convinced. They walked to the parking lot together, 3 feet apart. He waited until she had climbed into her car and turned on the headlights before heading toward the bus stop at the corner. As the bus pulled away, he saw her taillights merge with the rest of the traffic and vanish. The week that followed carried the same shape as any other on the surface: meetings, emails, sticky notes, coffee. Underneath, the ground felt less stable. Tyler did not say anything directly. He did not make jokes, did not nudge Noah in the hallway, did not mention the bistro. That silence was almost worse than teasing would have been. Once Noah walked past to the kitchen, just as Tyler was rinsing a mug. He heard his own name in a low murmur and caught the flash of a quick glance in his direction before the conversation snapped off. He did not stop to ask who else had heard. Elise was busier than usual. Lumen Bloom's internal timelines had moved up. There were more calls, more document reviews, more requests for last-minute changes from departments that previously had taken weeks to respond. She answered his texts, but often with short-clipped messages. "Sorry, on a call. Can we talk later?" "Oh, can we talk later?" At the office, miles around, careful. He told himself it was the workload. He believed it until Wednesday afternoon. He had just finished walking a junior designer through yet another revision when his phone buzzed on the desk. "Are you alone?" the message read. He glanced around. The desks near his were empty for once. Jenkins was in a meeting. The open office hummed at its usual low frequency. "Yes," he typed. "Call me when you can," she wrote. "Not on the office line." His pulse skipped. He pushed away from his chair and walked toward the stairwell instead of the elevators. The concrete walls and echoing footsteps gave him enough privacy. He dialed her number. She picked up on the first ring. "Hey," he said. "What is going on?" Her voice was tight. "Can you talk?" "Yeah, I am in the stairwell. Very glamorous." "I cannot do this on the phone," she said. "Can you come by my office tonight?" He pictured the glass and steel building Lumen Bloom occupied the foyer with its live plants and minimalist art. He thought of the cameras in the lobby, the security desk that logged every visitor. "Is everything okay?" he asked. There was a pause. "No," she said. "But I will be. I just need to see you. After work." He wanted to insist to push for information now, but something in her tone stopped him. A thread of old anger, of fear she was not letting fully into the words. "Okay," he said. "Text me the time." "Thank you," she said. The line clicked off. He stood on the landing for a moment longer, listening to his own breathing bounce off the concrete. Half an hour later, a calendar update appeared in his inbox. Client prep blocked off his late afternoon. Jenkins gave it a quick thumbs up when Noah mentioned he would swing by Lumen Bloom to go over some last-minute things. By 6, the sky outside Harbor Line was the color of ash. He grabbed his coat and the deck he had been refining for days and walked the 6 blocks to Lumen Bloom's building. It was smaller than Harbor Line's, but sleeker glass panels catching whatever light the gray evening offered. Inside, the lobby smelled like citrus and something floral. The security guard barely glanced up when he signed in. The elevator ride felt longer than it was, each floor number lighting up in slow succession. On the 8th floor, the doors opened onto a space that looked exactly like what he would have expected from Elise. Clean lines, plants in white pots, shelves holding neat rows of product. People in jeans and button-downs walked briskly from one meeting room to another, laptops tucked under their arms. Her office was at the end of a short corridor. The door was closed. He knocked softly. "Come in," she called. He stepped inside and closed the door behind him. Elise stood by the window, back to him, arms crossed. The city stretched beyond the glass lights, beginning to flicker on in the growing dark. Her reflection looked like a ghost overlaid on the skyline. When she turned, the look on her face made his hand tighten on the folder he carried. "Hey," he said carefully, "you look like someone stole your entire product line." "I had a meeting," she said. Her voice was too calm. "With who?" he asked, though he suspected the answer. "With Miles." She said the name like something bitter on her tongue. When Noah asked, "An hour ago." She walked around the desk, put a palm flat on its surface as if she needed the anchor. "He called. Said he wanted to go over some questions about the launch. I thought it would be about logistics, about budgets. I was wrong." Noah felt the first cold prickle of dread along his spine. "What did he say?" he asked. He said Elise replied that Tyler stopped by his office yesterday, that Tyler had seen his ex-wife and his mid-level account manager having what did not look like a strictly professional lunch by a lake. Noah sank into the chair in front of her desk, his knees suddenly less reliable. "Elise," he said, "I am sorry. I should have known better. I should have told you we should not go there." Do not apologize for wanting an hour where we did not have to hide in a back alley, she said. He is the one who turned it into a weapon. She moved away from the desk, pacing once across the rug, then back again. At first he kept it on the surface, she continued. He asked if my relationship with Harborline was still clear, if I felt the work being done was unbiased, if any personal entanglements were clouding my judgment. His words, not mine. How did you answer, Noah asked. I told him the work speaks for itself, she said. That the team is strong, that we both have too much at stake to be sloppy. Her jaw clenched. He smiled at that. You know that smile he does when he is about to say something terrible and dress it up as concern. Noah did know. He had seen it directed at him in performance reviews, at vendors on tough calls. He said Elise went on that he would hate for anyone's extracurriculars to damage the perception of Lumen Bloom's integrity, or Harborline's. She looked at Noah. He said he would hate for your daughter to see a headline with your name under it next to the phrase, professional misconduct. Noah's fingers tightened around the folder so hard the cardboard edges bit into his palm. He cannot do that, he said. His voice did not have as much conviction as he wanted. He can try, she said, and that is the problem. She listed the threats out in a flat tone as if reading from a report. If she questioned his judgment publicly, investors might ask why she chose Harborline in the first place. He could suggest to certain people that perhaps Lumen Bloom was a riskier partner than it appeared. He could pull the account from Harborline citing conflict of interest and quietly let his network know that Noah Reed was not to be trusted with sensitive clients. He said it all very calmly, Elise said. No shouting, no dramatic gestures, just bullet points. Noah felt something hollow open in his chest. The idea of losing his job was bad enough. The idea of being quietly blacklisted, of becoming a cautionary tale in an industry this small, tightened his throat. I will resign, he said. The decision formed itself as he spoke it. It felt both obvious and heavy. I will turn in my resignation before the presentation, he said. Call it what it is. Say, I crossed a line. He gets to be righteous. You keep the account. Lumen Bloom does not suffer. He has no reason to keep coming after you. Elise stared at him as if he had grown a second head. No, she said. It makes sense, he insisted. He has the power. We both know it. If I take myself out of the equation, he has nothing to punish. You can still do what you need to do. Ava will be fine. I can find something else eventually. Freelance, smaller clients, whatever it takes. No, she repeated. He pushed on. I will get through the deck tonight, come in early tomorrow and tell Jenkins. We can spin it however we need to. You have enough leverage to keep them from suing. You should not have to stand in the crosshairs because I could not keep my personal life separate from my job. Her eyes flashed. Do you hear yourself, she asked. Yes, he said. I hear someone trying not to be the reason your company gets damaged. You sound like me 5 years ago, she said, saying, he has the power so I will bend. It makes sense. Better to let him decide than face the consequences of saying no. He opened his mouth, then closed it. The sound of the city leaked faintly through the windows, a siren in the distance, the low rumble of traffic. Every choice I made in that marriage, she said, voice steady. I justified with that logic. He knows better. He knows the landscape. He will keep us safe. All I have to do is be reasonable, agree, step down when he says the step is too high for me. She walked closer, stopping on the other side of her desk. I finally left when I realized that safety he promised was just another word for control, she said. I built this company so I would not have to ask his permission to exist. And now you want me to stand here and watch you hand him your career on a platter like some kind of twisted peace offering. Her eyes were bright now, but she did not look away. I am not doing that again, she said. Noah rubbed a hand over his face, breathing shallow. I do not want to drag you into another war with him, he said. You got out. You have your own thing. You should not have to go back into that monster's orbit because of me. You are not dragging me, she said. I am walking in, on my own feet, because he already decided to come after us. The only choice we have is how we respond. He stared at the folder in his hands, at the Lumen Bloom logo on the cover. He thought of Ava asleep in her small bed, of the rent that came due every month, of the brittle pride he felt when he could pay it. What do you suggest, he asked quietly. Elise released a breath, some of the anger in her shoulders shifting into something like resolve. We do the presentation, she said, exactly as planned. You stand up there, and you show them the best work you have done in years. You let the campaign speak. And then he asked, and then she said if he tries to make good on his threats, I use what I have. He frowned. Which is what exactly? I own Lumen Bloom, she said. It is not his company. It is not his brand. It is mine. If he pulls the account from Harborline to punish you, I take my business somewhere else, and I make sure everyone knows why. And before he starts throwing your name around like a warning label, I make it very clear that if he does, I will be taking you with me. In-house. He blinked. You would hire me. I would promote you, she said. Harborline does not pay you like someone leading their biggest account. I would. You do not have to offer me a lifeboat, he said. Too late, she replied. I just did. He let the words sink in. A job at Lumen Bloom would change everything. Different hours, different pressure. No more pretending his loyalty belongs solely to Harborline when half his heart was in this office already. Are you sure, he asked. Clients are one thing. Employees are something else entirely. Miles will see that as another betrayal. She shrugged. He already thinks I betrayed him by leaving. The rest is just details. For a moment, the room felt smaller and larger at the same time. Smaller because of the weight of what they were discussing. Larger because for the first time since Tyler had stood in that restaurant doorway, there was an outline of something that was not pure damage control. I need you to trust me, she said softer now. Not as a client. Not as Miles's ex. As me. He looked at her across the desk at the set of her mouth, the way her hands were steady now resting on the edge of the wood. I do, he said. The truth of it surprised him with its clarity. I already do. Her shoulders dropped a fraction, some of the tension unspooling. Then meet me in that conference room tomorrow, she said, and bring the version of you that scared me a little during that first deck run-through. You were scared, he asked. Not of you, she said, of how much I wanted to believe you could actually pull this off. He huffed a laugh that felt almost like a release. No pressure. She rounded the desk, closing the distance between them. When she reached him, she slid her hands along his jaw, her thumbs resting just in front of his ears. I am sorry, she said quietly, that you are in this because of me. He shook his head. I walked into it with my eyes open, mostly. I am a big boy. She leaned down and kissed him. There was less heat in it than there had been on his couch, more steel. It felt like a seal on an agreement neither of them had signed on paper. When they finally stepped apart, she rested her forehead against his for a second. Go home, she said. Finish whatever last tweaks you are going to torture yourself with. Hug your kid. Sleep if you can. What about you, he asked. I have a few emails to send, she said, and a very long shower to take. He stood the folder still in his hand. At the door, he turned back. Elise, he said. Yes. If this goes badly, if he goes nuclear, you can still change your mind. Take the safe path. Pretend we never had this conversation. She gave him a look he had seen only a few times before in boardrooms, when a deal was on the line in her kitchen, when she talked about leaving her old life. I am done with safe paths that are just cages with nicer decor, she said. We are doing this. Outside her office, the hum of Lumen Bloom went on. People at desks, phones ringing, laptops open, life ticking forward. Noah rode the elevator down alone. In the reflection of the doors, he saw his own face drawn but set. When he stepped out into the lobby, the scent of citrus felt sharper. The air outside was cold and damp when he stepped onto the sidewalk. Street lamps painted pools of light on the wet pavement. He walked home with a folder under his arm and a determination in his chest that did not feel entirely like his own. At the apartment, Ava was sprawled across the couch, half asleep. A book open on her chest. The TV cast a blue wash over her face. Captain Leaf stood tall in his pot leaves tilted toward the window. Hey, Bug, Noah said softly, easing the book out of her hand. You are late, she mumbled. I know, he said. Big day tomorrow. You will crush it, she said without opening her eyes. He smiled. From your mouth to the universe's ears. She blinked up at him, hair sticking up at odd angles. Are you okay? He hesitated, then nodded. I am. Okay, she said. Do not forget to water Captain Leaf. He has expectations. She rolled over and was asleep again in seconds. In the kitchen, Noah filled a glass and poured a little water into the terracotta pot. The soil darkened, drinking it in. The small plant swayed slightly, as if in acknowledgement. Tomorrow, he thought. He turned off the lights, leaving only the glow from the street filtering through the blinds. The city outside moved on, unaware that in one corner office and one small apartment lines were being drawn that would not be easy to erase. The alarm went off before dawn. For a few seconds, Noah lay still, listening to the soft rasp of his own breath and the distant rush of cars. The room was dark except for a faint gray line at the edge of the blinds. His first clear thought was not about slides or talking points. It was a simple, solid word. Today. He swung his legs over the side of the bed and sat there until the floor felt real under his feet. In the hallway, the nightlight cast a weak glow on the framed pictures. One of them showed Ava in rubber boots, holding a plant twice her size. In the kitchen, the coffee maker sputtered to life. While it gurgled, he poured water into Captain Leaf's pot. The soil drank it down without complaint. Big day, Noah said softly. The plant said nothing, but its leaves stood straight and green. For some reason, that helped. Ava stumbled out a few minutes later, in an oversized t-shirt, hair sticking up. You are up early, she mumbled. Presentation, he said. Remember. She yawned and leaned against the counter, watching him scoop scrambled eggs onto a plate. You are going to do great, she said. You have not seen the opposition, he replied. The plants believe in you, she said solemnly. So do I. He smiled, the tightness in his chest loosening a little. Eat. The bus will not wait for my existential crisis. By the time he dropped her at school, the sky had shifted from gray to a pale, washed-out blue. At Harbor Line, the lobby felt colder than usual. He nodded to the receptionist, rode the elevator up with 2 designers and a media buyer, listened to them talk about impressions, and click through rates like this was any other morning. His inbox was full, but he did not sit down. Instead, he walked straight to the big conference room at the end of the corridor. The lights were off. The long table was empty, chairs tucked in neatly. The screen on the wall reflected the windows opposite a ghostly copy of the city beyond. He hit the switch. Fluorescence flickered on. He checked the projector, tested the remote, flipped through the deck one more time. The Lumen Bloom logo filled the screen in crisp color. The first line of his note stared back at him from the printout. Regrowth is not about pretending nothing was damaged. He closed the folder and set it down. His hands were steady. That surprised him. People filtered in over the next half hour. Jenkins arrived first, sleeves rolled up, tie slightly crooked. "You ready?" Jenkins asked. "No," Noah said. "But I am prepared." "Good answer," Jenkins said. He clapped Noah on the shoulder. "Let us make some people think we are geniuses." The creative leads came next, arms full of boards and mock-ups. They laid them out along the walls. Photos of faces in natural light, swatches of color that looked stolen from earth and stone, not neon. A few minutes before the meeting time, the door opened and Miles walked in. He did not slam it or throw his weight around. He did not have to. The room seemed to adjust itself to accommodate him, air shifting in barely noticeable ways. He wore a dark suit that fit so well, it might as well have been part of his anatomy. His expression was neutral. "Morning," he said. A handful of people replied in chorus. Noah's voice stayed in his throat. Miles took a seat near the middle of the table, where he could see both the screen and the people presenting. He set his phone face down in front of him, folded his hands, and waited. Elise arrived last. She stepped into the room with her assistant a pace behind her, the hum of conversation dipping for a moment. Her hair was pulled back into a low knot. She wore a tailored navy suit that managed to look both sharp and feminine, a simple white shirt underneath, no visible jewelry except the small studs in her ears. "Sorry," she said. "Traffic." No one believed it, but everyone accepted it. She took the chair at the far end of the table directly opposite the screen. From where Noah stood, he could see both her and Miles without turning his head much. They did not look at each other. "Thank you all for making the time," Jenkins began. "Today is the full run-through for Lumen Bloom's new line. We are excited to show you where we have landed." He nodded toward Noah. "Reed, take it from here." Noah stepped to the front of the room, remote in hand. For a heartbeat, the whole space sharpened. Every face, every reflection in the glass, every breath. "Good morning," he said. His voice sounded clearer than he felt. "I will get straight into it." The first slide showed a simple image, a hand brushing soil away from a small green sprout. "What we are proposing," Noah said, "is a campaign built around the idea of regrowth, not as a miracle, not as an erasure of what came before, as a process." He clicked. The slide changed to side-by-side photos of skin, one with redness, small marks, visible texture, the other calmer, more even, but still recognizably human. "Our research told us," he continued, "that people are tired of being told that the goal is to look like they were never touched by life. They do not believe in flawless anymore. They believe in recovery, in care, in putting in time and patience and seeing small results add up." He watched the room as he spoke. The junior coordinator was scribbling notes. One of the creative directors leaned forward, eyes on the slide he had seen a dozen times, but was clearly still proud of. Miles's face remained unreadable. Elise's gaze was fixed on him, not on the screen. He clicked again. A video sample played muted. A woman in her 30s washed her face in her own bathroom, not a set. The light came from a window, not a rig. A close-up of her hand dipping into a jar. The texture of the cream was visible, not blurred. The camera lingered on the way her skin looked when she laughed at something off-screen. "We are not promising a new face," Noah said. "We are promising a better relationship with the one you already have." He walked them through taglines, placements, rollouts, bus shelters and pre-roll spots, influencer partnerships that did not feel like paid performances, and store moments that invited people to touch and test instead of just stare at a wall of boxes. The plant motif appeared in small, consistent ways. A young shoot on the corner of a poster, a line drawing on the inside of a box, a series of time-lapse images for social showing, a cutting, take root, and grow. "People already use plants as a metaphor for their own care," he said. "We are meeting them where they are, instead of inventing a new language and asking them to relearn how to speak." He could hear his voice steadying further with each slide. The room began to feel less like a tribunal and more like a place where he knew what he was doing. When he reached the final section, he took a breath. "Financially," he said, "we project this will reposition Lumen Bloom for a broader audience without alienating its core base. We are not chasing trends. We are returning to the original promise of the brand and saying it in a way that fits the current conversation." He gestured toward the screen where the last frame showed the phrase, "Let yourself grow back," above the image of a woman looking directly into the camera, freckles and all. "We think this is not just a campaign," he finished. "We think it is a chapter, one that can sustain multiple launches and extensions without losing its center." He let the words hang for a moment. Then he clicked the remote one last time. The screen returned to the simple Lumen Bloom logo. Silence filled the room thicker than before. Papers rustled. Someone cleared their throat. In the glass wall, the reflection of the city shimmered faintly, buildings, layered over the faint ghost of Noah standing alone at the front of the room. "Questions?" Noah asked. For a heartbeat, nothing. Then one of Harborline's strategy directors asked about media spend. A numbers person from Lumen Bloom's team asked about testing methods. Noah and the creatives answered, passing the ball back and forth smoothly. They had rehearsed these responses. They knew where the weak spots were and how to shore them up. Through it, Elise stayed quiet. She took notes, eyes moving between the page and the people speaking. Her assistant occasionally leaned in to whisper something, which she nodded at or dismissed with a small shake of her head. Finally, when the last spreadsheet had been explained, and the last research slide defended, the room drifted into a lull. Noah could feel the meeting tilting toward conclusion. This was the point in other presentations where everyone nodded, said, "Looks good," and talked about next steps. Before he could move into his final thank you, Elise closed her notebook. "I have one question," she said. Every head turned toward her, including Miles's. She did not look at Noah now. Her gaze rested on the man halfway down the table who had been watching the proceedings like a judge at a tournament he believed he could win blindfolded. "Miles," she said, "do you agree? This campaign is exceptional." The air in the room changed. Everyone who was not directly involved suddenly found something very interesting to look at in their notes. Jenkins shifted in his chair. The junior coordinator stopped breathing. Across the table, Miles's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "The work is adequate," he said. He put the slightest pause before adequate, just enough to make it sound like a verdict. Elise smiled. It did not reach her eyes. So she tries. "I did not ask if it was adequate," she said. "I asked if it was exceptional." Miles leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. "You always did enjoy forcing people into specific adjectives." "Clarity is useful," she said, "particularly when we are about to sign off on a campaign that affects my company's next few quarters." He held her stare for a beat longer, then glanced at the screen as if seeing it for the first time. "The work is good," he said. "Strong. It will do what it is supposed to do." In Miles's language, it was as close to a compliment as anyone could reasonably expect. In anyone else's, it sounded grudging. Elise nodded once. "Thank you." She turned her attention briefly to the harbor line side of the table. "You have done impressive work," she said. "You listened. You pushed back when it was right to push back. You did not try to sell me something that looked like what everyone else is doing. I appreciate that." There were quiet exhales around the room. Shoulders relaxed, pens lowered. Then she faced Miles again. "Which brings me to a decision," she said. Noah felt his stomach dip. This was not on any agenda. Jenkins shot him a quick, puzzled glance. Noah kept his eyes on the table, then slowly back on Elise. "What decision?" Miles asked. His tone was almost bored. "Whether your personal feelings are more important than good business," Elise said. The words landed with more force than their volume suggested. A couple of people shifted in their seats. Someone at the far end of the table took a sudden keen interest in the pattern of the carpet. "I do not follow," Miles said. His voice stayed smooth. Only the muscle ticking once in his cheek betrayed anything else. "I think you do," Elise replied, "but I will spell it out." She clasped her hands lightly on the table, posture relaxed. Noah knew that posture. It meant she was about to do something that left no room for misunderstanding. "I am prepared to approve this campaign," she said. "Fully. Budget, media, the works. I am prepared to let Harborline handle the launch of what will be Lumen Bloom's most important line in years." She paused just long enough for the weight of that to settle. "I am also aware," she continued, "that you have expressed concerns. Not about the work. About a supposed conflict of interest related to your employee and your ex-wife." The words ex-wife hung in the air like a low note. Miles's gaze flicked just once in Noah's direction, then back to Elise. "This is not the forum for that," he said. "It is exactly the forum for that," she said. Her tone sharpened by a degree. "Because you invited that topic into a discussion about whether to keep this account. So, here we are." She did not raise her voice. She did not gesture. Yet somehow she commanded the entire room. "You are free to decide that your discomfort with my personal life is grounds to end this business relationship," she said. "You are also free to decide that Harborline is more interested in policing office gossip than in growing a client's brand. In that scenario, I will take Lumen Bloom elsewhere." The words came out calm, but there was iron underneath. "I have options," she said. "Other agencies would be happy to take this campaign. I do not say that as a threat, just as a fact. You know it. I know it." Noah could feel the tension tightening like a cable. The creatives looked stricken. Jenkins's expression had gone very carefully neutral. "And before you consider punishing your employee for having the bad manners to be a human being with feelings," Elise went on, "let me be equally clear about this. If you force him out, I will hire him. Lumen Bloom needs a marketing director. I would rather have someone who understands this campaign and this brand than someone who reads well in a LinkedIn search." The room fell utterly silent. Even the HVAC hum seemed to drop away. Noah stared at her pulse hammering in his throat. He had known she was going to push back. He had not expected her to lay it all out on the table like evidence in a trial. Miles's eyes had gone flat and bright. When he spoke, his voice was still quiet. "You would poach my employee," he said. "I would rescue a talented marketer from a toxic situation," she replied. "You are not the only one who gets to frame things." There was heat in the word toxic. It flashed and was gone, but Noah saw it. For a second, Miles looked like he might stand up, slam a fist down, do any of the dramatic things people who did not know him might imagine. Instead, he laughed once. The sound was short and humorless. "You always were ruthless when you believed you were right," he said. "I suppose I should not be surprised to see that skill applied in other directions now. The difference," Elise said, "is that I am not doing this to win a fight with you. I am doing it because it is the only way to keep this from spilling into all the places it has no business touching. She glanced around the room, including the Harbor Line team, in her gaze. I am not interested in being a spectacle for your staff, she said. I am not interested in watching a good campaign die because our divorce makes people uncomfortable. This is my company, my brand, my future. I will not let it be collateral damage. She brought her attention back to him. So, she said, which matters more to you, your ego or the work? The question sat there bare, leaving him very little space to hide. Noah watched Miles' process move through some private calculus he could not see. The older man's expression did not change much, but something in his shoulders shifted a subtle adjustment from attack to retreat. He turned his gaze on Noah. And you, Miles said. I underestimated you, Reed. Noah felt the room's attention swing in his direction like a spotlight. Yes, sir, he said, because he could not think of anything else. I thought you were solid, Miles said. Reliable, careful. I did not think you had the nerve to navigate all this and still deliver work at this level. It might have been a compliment. It might have been an accusation. I did my job, Noah said. Miles lifted a hand, cutting off any further explanation. Save it, he said. We are not here to perform a play about ethics. We are here to decide whether to move forward. He looked back at Elise. The campaign stays, he said. Lumenbloom stays. Reed stays. There was a barely visible relaxing of muscles around the table. Someone exhaled audibly and then tried to cover it with a cough. But Miles added, and the room went still again. I will not be made a fool of. He aimed the last sentence at both of them, as if he could pin them to their respective chairs with it. Whatever is happening between you, he said, stays out of my office, out of my boardroom, out of my company's reputation. If I hear about it affecting the work, there will not be another conversation. Understood? Elise's face was unreadable. Noah forced himself to hold Miles's gaze. Understood, Noah said. Understood, Elise echoed. Miles collected his phone with deliberate motions and slid it into his jacket pocket. Good work, he said to the room at large. Make sure it translates outside these walls. With that, he left. The door closed behind him with a soft click. The sound felt far louder. For a long moment, no one moved. Then the tension broke all at once. Chairs creaked. People shifted. Someone let out a low whistle under their breath, quickly stifled. The creatives began gathering their boards, hands moving faster than their brains had caught up. Jenkins looked at Noah, eyebrows raised. Nice job, Reed, he said, on the campaign. There was emphasis on the last three words that sounded a lot like a reminder. Thank you, Noah replied. He felt bone-tired. The adrenaline that had held him upright through the presentation and the confrontation was ebbing, leaving a heavy ache behind. Elise closed her notebook with a quiet snap. She stood smoothing the front of her suit and addressed the Harbor Line team. Thank you all, she said. We have a lot of work ahead of us, but this is a strong place to start. The room murmured back. People filtered out in ones and twos, carrying laptops and stacks of paper drifting toward their desks, where other tasks waited to reclaim their attention. Noah stayed where he was, lingering by the head of the table, under the pretense of organizing his notes. His hand shook once when he tried to straighten a stack. He set the papers down and left them crooked. Soon, only 3 people remained in the room, Noah, Elise, and Jenkins. I am assuming, Jenkins said, rubbing a hand over his face, that there are parts of this story I do not want to know. That is a safe assumption, Elise said. Jenkins nodded. Then I will stick to what I do know. That was a hell of a presentation. If we pull this off, we are going to have a very happy client. I plan to be very demanding, Elise said. I would expect nothing less, Jenkins replied. He looked at Noah again. Take an hour, he said. Then come find me. We need to talk rollout. When he left, it really was just the two of them. The door shut with that same soft click. The room felt bigger and smaller at once. Elise walked to the end of the table where Noah stood and picked up one of the printouts. Her fingers traced a line under the tagline. Let yourself grow back, she read quietly. You know I did not miss the metaphor. I figured you would catch it, he said. She set the paper down and looked at him. The professional mask she had worn all morning slipped, revealing the mix of relief and exhaustion underneath. I think we just did something very stupid, she said. Probably, he said. Also something necessary to get too busy. She exhaled a small huff that might have been a laugh if it had not sounded so tired. You were good in there, she said. You were calm. You were clear. You did not flinch. I was flinching internally, he said, all over the place. You hit it well, she replied. They stood for a moment, surrounded by images of faces and plants, by numbers on charts and words on paper, by the echo of a man choosing profit over pride for the first time in a long time. So Noah said eventually, do I still have a job? You have too, she said, at least conceptually. He shook his head, a small smile breaking through. Of course you are planning succession routes before we even leave the building. Planning is how I stay sane, she said, or something close. He leaned back against the edge of the table, the smooth surface pressing into his palms. I do not know how to do this, he admitted. Any of it. I know how to be good at my job. I know how to take care of my kid. I do not know how to be this person who stands up to people like Miles and walks away with anything still intact. You just did, she said. He met her eyes. Only because you were there. We did it, she said, plural. He let that sit between them, solid and real. Should we talk about He gestured vaguely, encompassing the invisible line that ran from her office to his apartment. About us, she said. Yeah. She glanced toward the glass wall. Outside, people were still moving around the open office, carrying coffees, talking into headsets, sending emails that felt urgent only until the next thing arrived. Not here, she said. Not where every surface reflects us back. He nodded. The conference room suddenly seemed full of eyes, even though the room was empty. I have to go back to Lumen Bloom, she said. There are a few bridges that will need reinforcing after today. I should probably pretend to work, he said. Jenkins will notice if I hide in a supply closet all afternoon. She stepped closer just enough that her hand brushed his as she passed him on her way to the door. The contact was fleeting, but deliberate. Tonight, she said quietly, if you want, your place. I want, he said. She opened the door and slipped out of her expression via already shifting back into the CEO neutral she wore in hallways. The door closed behind her. Noah stayed for a moment longer alone in the too bright room, with the ghost of her handprint still warm on his skin. Then he gathered his notes, straightened his shoulders, and walked back out into the glass and hum of Harbor Line. The apartment felt different that night. It looked the same when Noah walked in. Shoes kicked off by the door, a jacket draped over the back of a chair, a cereal bowl in the sink that neither he nor Ava remembered to rinse that morning. The plants on the table leaned toward the window leaves, catching the last of the light. Still, something in the air felt charged, like the moment before a storm that would not quite break. Ava was at Emily's again this time for a midweek dinner and math homework session. The apartment was quiet, in a way it rarely was. He straightened a stack of mail that did not need straightening, wiped an already clean counter, checked the clock too often. When the doorbell finally rang, the sound cut through his nerves like a clear note. He opened the door to see Elise standing there, in a dark coat hair, loose around her shoulders. The hallway light put a faint halo on the flyaways. Hi, she said. Hi, he answered. For a moment, they just looked at each other. Then he stepped aside and she walked in, bringing with her the faint scent of cold air, and whatever perfume she wore when she did not have a boardroom waiting. She shrugged off her coat and hung it on the same overloaded hook he used. Captain Leaf stood proudly on the table soil, dark from that morning's water. The other jars and pots made their small, irregular row. Elise, he began. She reached for his hand before he could say more. Sit with me first, she said. They sat on the couch. Not close, not far. The space between them felt like it could expand or contract depending on what they chose next. I meant what I said, she began. In that room, with everyone listening, I am not going to pretend this is not happening just because it is inconvenient for him. Noah exhaled. I know, but I also do not want to pretend nothing changes. As long as we keep our heads down, she said. Everything changed. For me, at least. She looked at him, eyes steady. I want you in my life, she said. Not as a secret that only exists in the spaces that are easiest to hide. I want to be able to plan my day and have you in it without checking over my shoulder first, to see if he is watching. I want to be able to learn how to cook one meal you do not have to fix. I want to hear about Ava's projects from her, not as anecdotes you rush through while we are shoving our coats on. He let the words sink in, warm and terrifying. That means we have to be boringly careful with anything that touches Harbor Line, she continued. It means we do not give anyone the satisfaction of an office spectacle. It means we endure the looks and the whispers, and we do not let them decide what we are to each other. She reached for his hand, folding her fingers with his. And if it gets to a point where this place tries to make you choose, she said, then yes, I want you at Lumen Bloom. Not as some prize I stole, as someone I trust with something that matters more than a campaign. He watched their joined hands on his knee. His thumb rubbed absent circles over her skin as if checking she was really there. I kept my life small on purpose, he said quietly. I thought that was the only way to make sure I did not break anything that mattered. This feels like the opposite of small. It is, she said. That is the point. He looked up at her. I am in, he said simply. Even with Miles watching, she asked. Even with Miles watching, he said. Even if he never stops. Her shoulders dropped a long breath, leaving her. Some of the tightness in her face smoothed out. Okay, she said. He tugged her closer then, into the space between them. The kiss they shared did not have the frantic edge of their earlier nights. There was heat, but also something else, something that felt like agreement. That was how it began. 6 months later, the city wore a different season. Spring had given way to summer, the kind of mild, green-edged warmth Seattle offered, when it felt generous. The apartment was no longer an apartment. Noah stood in the kitchen of a small house with chipped white cabinets and a view of a backyard that had once been mostly dirt. The place still smelled faintly of the paint he and Ava had rolled onto the walls in crooked lines. Through the window over the sink, he could see the garden. A patch of grass still a little thin in spots. A small raised bed along the fence where herbs and tomatoes had taken tentative hold. Near the center, 3 people knelt around a rectangle of freshly turned earth. Ava wore shorts and an old t-shirt streaked with dirt. Her hair was pulled into 2 messy braids. She held a trowel in one hand, pointing with it like a conductor's baton. No, the lavender goes here, she said. It likes the sun. The marigolds can go closer to the fence. They are tough. Yes, ma'am, Elise said. She wore an old tank top of Noah's and faded jeans, knees already damp from the soil. A smear of dirt ran along one cheekbone, where she had brushed hair away with a muddy hand. She was laughing at something Ava had said, head tipped back, throat exposed to the gentle sun. The third person was a neighbor's kid who had wandered in under the promise of lemonade. He mostly watched fascinated as Elise let Ava direct the whole operation. The air outside shimmered slightly with heat. The smell of earth and crushed leaves drifted in whenever the faint breeze lined up with the open back door. Noah wiped his damp hands on a dish towel and leaned on the counter, soaking it in. His phone buzzed near the fruit bowl. He picked it up, expecting a reminder for a bill or a message from Jenna about yoga and brunch. The sender's name stopped him. Miles. For a second he considered not opening it, then he exhaled and tapped the screen. The message was short. Lumen Bloom Q3 numbers look very strong. Whatever my personal opinions, the two of you clearly function well as a team. No punctuation beyond that, no sign off, no apology, no threat. Still, something in Noah's chest eased. It was not forgiveness. It was not warmth. It was an acknowledgement that the sky was not falling, that in the column where numbers mattered more than stories, the work stood on its own. He typed out 3 replies in his head and deleted them. In the end, he sent only 2 words. Thank you. He set the phone back down and looked out the window again. Outside, Ava had moved on to instructions about watering schedules. Elise pushed a small plant into place, cupping the soil around its base with careful hands. Gently, Ava said, "You are supposed to encourage it, not squish it to death." "I am encouraging it aggressively," Elise said. Ava laughed. The sound floated up toward the kitchen, mixing with the creak of the old back gate whenever the neighbor's kid ran to fetch something. As if sensing his gaze, Elise glanced toward the house. Through the glass, their eyes met. Her face lit slow and real. She mouthed something he did not need sound to hear. "I love you." He felt his mouth curve as he answered with the same words. His hand rested on the frame of the window, the wood warm under his palm. He stepped out into the yard a moment later. The air wrapped around him, warmer than the apartment had ever been. The grass felt uneven under his shoes, soft in some spots, still rough in others. Ava spotted him first. "You are just in time," she announced. "We need muscle." "For what?" he asked. She pointed to the far corner, where an empty patch of dirt waited beneath the fence. "Elise says we could put a swing there," Ava said. "I say we need a tree. We decided you have to help dig the hole either way." "Good to know I am valued for my strength," he said. "You are also valued for your pancakes," Elise added, getting to her feet. "But right now, yes, we need you to dig." She brushed dirt off her hands and stepped close enough to drop a quick kiss on his cheek. Her skin smelled like sunscreen and soil. The combination felt perfect. "We are making this up as we go," she said under her breath. "I know," he said. He took the shovel leaning against the fence and pushed the blade into the ground. The earth gave way, dark and crumbly. The sound of metal cutting through dirt was oddly satisfying. Ava knelt beside him, scooping loosened clumps aside with her hands. Elise crouched on his other side, hair falling forward, one hand steadying the trunk of a small sapling in a plastic pot. "What is this one called again?" Noah asked. "Hopi," Ava said immediately. Elise raised an eyebrow. "I thought we agreed on something less obvious." "We did not agree," Ava said. "You said it was too on the nose." "I said noses are great." Noah laughed, the sound mixing with theirs. "Hope it is," he said. Together they lowered the thin trunk into the hole. Noah filled in the gaps with soil while Ava patted it down gently as instructed. Elise adjusted the angle until the tree stood straight. They stepped back to look at it. A thin stick of a thing, a few leaves trembling at the top. It did not look like much yet. Noah could already see it in his mind, with its branches spread wide, leaves casting shade on the patch of grass where a child might lie on a summer afternoon. He slid his arm around Elise's waist. She leaned into him, head resting briefly against his shoulder. Ava stood in front of them, hands on her hips, inspecting their work with a critical eye. "Good start," she declared. Noah looked from the sapling to the woman at his side to the girl in front of him. The yard was still patchy, the house still full of boxes not yet unpacked, the world still full of people whose opinions he could not control. It did not matter. "Yeah," he said, "it is. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story.